It starts with a simple question and ends in objective reality. Through our journey from there to here, we find one another and ourselves. And as the next 24 hours breaks free from our last, we gaze onward in reflection of the day.
Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.
Welcome to the Daily Wrap-Up.
Friday, May 15th, 2026. Thank you for joining me today. Got a pretty good show planned for you today. Some follow-ups from yesterday with my discussion with Charlie that I think you're really going to find interesting. We're going to follow up on a couple of stories you've heard before that are suddenly in the conversation again, and it's good that they're being talked about, but want to go over this again and ask why now, and some important kind of follow-ups on Iran and what happened in China, and a few kind of, multifaceted points around the larger conversation of Iran and the alleged ceasefire, where they currently are in negotiations, bombings in UAE, and of course, Israel bombing in Gaza, which shouldn't surprise anybody who's been paying attention. But for those that might have been shocked by that title, you should understand that that's been happening pretty consistently. This has been something that's been publicly acknowledged, and they claim it's going after Hamas after all that we talked about, after all that's happened. And it's repositioning them to begin that yet again. And we're going to talk about all of that today. But I want to start with some important stuff that speaks to the reality of our government, but more in particular in the moment, the administration that's currently there. But I want to make sure you hear that first part, that it's not just about Trump. And it's bigger even in this country when you understand that, I think, what this connects to. But I want to first start with a couple of points that I saw. One that has to do with Harvey Weinstein that will frustrate those of us that wanted to see, that even thought that what happened to him was some level of accountability. And I, frankly, being embarrassed, being seen for the monster that you are, those are small. I mean, I shouldn't even say small. Those are wins. In a system that is designed to protect people like that, it's a win. But then they never seem to go to jail. And if you're already getting wind, it seems the trial has been dismissed. And we'll go into that in a second. Connections with the Epstein point we'll talk about, and some larger points to start that I want to get into, but we'll just start with this. Judge declares a mistrial in Harvey Weinstein's rape retrial after jury says it is deadlocked. I mean, look, what we have to understand about this story, it's the Weinstein story, which we covered when it was going on extensively. This was not about, some women that accused him with nothing to go on. And you could point to a lot of allegations that swirled around this. This kicked off the Me Too movement that I think was absolutely weaponized by a system designed to bury it in baseless allegations, even ones that were real, but just they didn't have anything to back them up with. That then caused people, and even I would argue rightly so, that's why it's designed that way, weaponized, to then stand back and go, whoa, okay, what of these are fake? What of these are embellishments? What of these are political manipulations? Which of these allegations are being used by the other side to go after their political adversary? And all those things matter, including that many of them, if not, I argue most, were actually true. And in this case, Harvey Weinstein, I don't want to go through his story again, frankly, because I feel like, it really deserves attention because this person is a horrible, horrible person. What he was doing, what he did to people, abusing his power to force women into positions of sexual, what's interesting is we're going to make a point today, later in the show, about the argument of sex slaves and what Hamas allegedly did to people from Israel, even though we know as a matter of fact that didn't happen. And I mean a matter of fact, not because they claimed otherwise, but because we can prove it now with people that were home. We'll go in that again, even though Elon Levy is yet again going this is what happens when you use sex slaves, even though we know that's not true. And he's pointing to a genocide. We'll go into all that. But the idea here is that these people get away with this on such a large scale, and what they can do in front of the whole world and be seen for what they're doing, using that power to create a situation where people are forced almost into a system where they, think about it like this. And I don't want to go into all this, but the idea of as a power dynamic where you have people who almost know that if they say something, that this won't be in their favor. Think about what people are dealing with the Trump administration right now. And hopefully you still understand that means just our government, but he's the one in power right now. And understand, but he does have a special way of weaponizing his power and understanding that there are people who look at what's happening, people that have been taken advantage of, even sexually abused, who look and go, well, if I speak up about this, they will ruin my life. or they will have enough power that it will ultimately never amount to anything other than, and that's, people think about that stuff. That's what this person was a huge part of. And he also used Black Cube, which was it's a Mossad, I guess, private security dynamic that he utilized using former Mossad agents to go in and to harass, surveil, and follow the people who accused him. And after all of this time, after all of the evidence and what we know about this person, not only has he gone through one trial, and now he's gone through a second trial that has been dismissed. Declared a mistrial, rather. So we just can't get through the evidence. And so I argue that this is how it was always going to go, that this person was never truly going to be held accountable. And I hope I'm wrong. I just think we're at a point where one after another, it's becoming pretty damn clear, whatever the mechanism is, that people like this, they get embarrassed. The worst that happened, they get fired from their job, they get dragged in front of the media and, maybe spend some time in jail like he did. But ultimately, the way it seems to go is that he will not be held accountable for the crimes that he committed. I hope that I'm wrong on that. But the reason I'm even showing that, because this just came up today, is just the larger point of where we are in the world today and what is actually driving the power structures. Like one of the big things people pointed out about the U.S. government, they called it not the Epstein class. What was the point? There was an argument that was made. I'm forgetting the term they used. But basically realizing that the Epstein story opened this awareness, or rather just opened people's minds to asking a question that they never would have asked before. Is there something else actually controlling the way our world works? Is there something else that's dictating what our government decides? Even if it's also what we think to a degree, it's a lot more, or at least partly billionaires, lobbyists, foreign countries with lots of influence, blackmail, corruption. And I think what we're seeing is that understanding and not really being able to define it, but this kind of stuff makes it even more clear. It's frustrating. And of course, this overlaps with something you might have seen. Nothing new, by the way. The grandstanding from both sides, the illusion of accountability of this one clown on the left calling out this one clown on the right, and ultimately doing nothing about anything. I know for those maybe new to the political conversation, or maybe just, for whatever the reason is, you don't see what I think I see. If you watch this long enough, there's only so many times you can watch the cycle of yelling and have nothing actually happen. Conservatives are going through that right now with Trump. How many times can you yell about Obama? How many times can you yell about Pelosi? How many times can you yell about everybody, Epstein files, everything, and not have one person get arrested? And I'm not talking about we're yelling about investigations. They're yelling, they're treasonous. They're traitors. They stole the election. Cash was telling you it's all going down. The FBI's hiding everything. And then they get in power and nothing happens. I mean, so at some point you got to step back and go, and it's not just this administration. Something is amiss, obviously. So what happens in this clip is Schiff is going after Kash Patel for obvious reasons. And my point, though, is that they have the ability to stand there like they're the one calling things out, like they're the ones speaking truth to power, but they don't do anything. So they're using that failure to make themselves look good, but all of them seem to never really want to hold each other accountable. So by pointing out that Schiff is saying something I believe is accurate about Kash, it's not taking either of their side. It's just taking the side of the truth that he's using and weaponizing for his own personal gain. That's how I would look at it. So what he's going after Kash Patel for is any number of things. But the one thing that stands out in this, what they get into, is the Black Book argument, where he went to Glenn Beck's show and said they have the Black Book. And then he asked him point blank about what that represents. And he says, we released it already. And if you look into what the argument is of the Black Book, that's the list people talked about. Now, if you're not just a surface level, like if you don't think beyond the words that are used and you haven't looked into the story, it was never a sheet with a list of names. It could have ended up that way if they had cataloged it, but it's about their information and what they put together as his client list for multifaceted pieces of information. And so they then kind of couched it as there's no book, there's no list, even though they know what we're talking about, right? And so at the end of the day, he basically got asked about that, and he said, we've released it already. Even though if you ask him in other contexts, he'd say there is no such thing. And then asked about whether or not they're trafficking to people based on the evidence we all know we can see, and he yet again, well, he sidesteps answering it the same way, but ultimately points back to his last statement, that he trafficked nobody but himself. I mean, we still have the Zorro Ranch part that has never even fully been investigated. We've got multiple examples of crimes that are on record that they've never fully fleshed out. And we have evidence of trafficking that again, you can't have Ghislaine Maxwell in jail for those crimes without it's just a big show, in my opinion. So watch it if you want. One side's making out to be Kash dunking on Schiff. The other side, it's just this game, guys. And the truth is, one thing he also brings up that's an old article we pointed to in the past, August 31st from 2025, Ghislaine Maxwell hinted at Trump's ties or Epstein's ties to Trump officials. And then, of course, got a deal with Blanche, went to a nice low security place. And then now it looks like she's going to get pardoned when they're going to find a moment when no one's paying attention. So how can Maxwell, hint, and this is what Schiff brings up. But again, I argue they won't go further than this, that Maxwell goes talking to Blanche on the record, says, you've got people in your administration that are compromised by Epstein. And then his next question was about something about massages and something else, and never revisits the question, never goes, well, who are you referring to? Then you get boxes of things that get exchanged. They talk off the record. Then people end up in special places. So you can decide for yourself what all that amounts to. Don't guess, don't assume, but you can acknowledge what the obvious things are showing you, that there's corruption taking place, that there's people that are getting special deals when, your entire team was screaming about how these people are the worst thing in the world. I agree with you, but now your team is also letting them go. Now, we talked with Charlie Robinson, which, in case you haven't caught wind of it or haven't heard us talk about it, he and I do a show twice a month now called What the Hell is Happening? More of a casual show, just about kind of discussing the madness of partisan politics. And, I enjoy talking with him because we have very similar opinions on a lot of things, but we definitely see things differently in some cases. And I find that makes a really good show. And we talk about the manipulation of the two-party illusion, the way that we're being gamed, the larger kind of global dynamics that are shifting around us and how the partisan game lies about that. But overall, there was a point I wanted to highlight here. This is the show if you want to check it out. I thought this was interesting. So, little precursor. We showed this yesterday, or in that show we talked about this. And you'll hear it when I play the clip really quickly. I just saw this. It just popped up. And I usually don't get, like I said, it's a little more of a casual kind of conversational show, but we still usually don't get into things that we haven't fleshed out. But I thought it was an interesting point. When I made it clear, I said, let's just talk about it. I just saw this. So knowing that we don't know much more than what we're looking at and questioning everything and having not done, research around it, what do we think about it, And so he and I talk about it. Now, let me play this first, and then we'll go through what actually happened. And I find this to be insane. Now, all I'm really highlighting first is just objectivity. And it's not like some grand deal. Like, it's not like we're psychic and we all saw through it. It's just being able to go, we should question whether they're wrong about that all the time should be like a bare minimum requirement of anybody in this field. But what you'll find is that's the last thing people like Jesse Waters ever do when it comes to their side. And we're talking about Jesse Waters, like one of the most prominent people in Fox News, not some Nick Sorter moron on Twitter, guys. And even though he's got millions of followers, it's even within the community, people like Tucker and the rest sort of lay shade and make fun of them, right? So, but Jesse Waters, who does the same holy crap breaking news red light thing that they do, is huge and influential. And this is going to make a point, hopefully, for people that still think they may be honest. Or I shouldn't even say it like that they may think that they are good at their jobs, do their due diligence, and check their facts before they report things. So here's what Charlie and I were talking about when we first started this in yesterday's show. On that note, it's something that's still developing. But first, the point that I was talking about yesterday, which I found very interesting. This is because the show before that, in fact, I was pointing to a lot of these things, the failure of arresting or even charging Obama, or any of the failure, which I argue will fail yet again, and designed to, by the way, I argue the James Comey case, any number of things, or just any number of failures or leaks or ongoing points that they are embarrassed by. And I thought to myself, well, you can't say it's Democrat holdovers at this point because they're this far in, they've gotten rid of all these people. And then like the next day I saw this point. So just me chiming in, not in the clip. This is the post from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Because I kind of clipped this really quickly. So the point is simply that they came out with a post that says, pointing to something Andrew Colvett said from, Turning Point, whatever it is now, and saying that, look at, Brennan saying there's all these people still infiltrated the intelligence community, which I think I do say there. But the overall point is that I was just saying how skeptical I am about why, what are they going to blame now? And then the next day it comes out where they go, guess what? There's still a bunch of Democrats that are in her administration, which seems a little bit easy to, it seems like a scapegoat to me. And this is the office, this is Tulsi Gabbard's office pointing to this post saying the CIA Director John Brennan just said the quiet part out loud, that there's still a legion of bureaucrats within the intel and justice communities who are actively sabotaging Trump's authority, which it certainly could be. In fact, it wouldn't even surprise me. But I just said it's convenient timing for an administration imploding in front of us to simply go, well, any mistake is because of the people from holdover positions. And then the next day, I see this. For all we know, this didn't even happen. That's how our mind should be with every one of these moments. You know, that maybe it's a story they made up. Maybe it didn't happen. Maybe it was a different office, or then the media got it wrong. You know, it's like, it's just a weird time where everything should be questioned. Maybe this is a deep fake for all we know. Okay. Yeah, sorry for confusing you in the chat there. That was me chiming in. I was hoping to make that clear, but chiming in on the clip. But okay, that was just a randomly off the top of my head thing, which everybody should do. And you guys in this chat, you probably already know where this is going because you probably already do this every time you look at anything on the internet. Which I was just kind of like, you know, whatever. Maybe it's deep fake. Maybe it's a wrong op. Maybe the media got it wrong. Well, funny enough, let's get into the story. So even someone in the chat was like, oh man, I didn't even know this happened. They raided Tulsi Gabbard. For about 24 hours, that was the story. And even still right now, it's being used. And we should still be considering that maybe now with where it's going, that was the real story. See, this is what it's like to question everything. And I know that gets frustrating for some people. It doesn't mean you then conflate everything all the time and sit there with multiple ideas in your head conflicting each other. You just always keep it in your mind as a possibility. That's all it really means. Is it possible that aliens flew in today and made this all happen? Sure, that's possible. That's in the way over there on the side, but it's, you know, I'm kind of joking. The point though is that's what I mean, is just having the ability to go could be, but then come back to what you can prove in the moment. So knowing that case, let's look at what actually happened. So here was the Senator Ron Johnson saying, you know, who's running the deep state? Here's the post I'll include for you right here from the office of the DNI, saying that they, you know, basically now, well, we got a bunch of Democrats still stuck in it, and that's why everything's going wrong that you think is going wrong. Whatever it is you think is going wrong, it's because of the people that are there that we're not pointing to, that we're not naming, that we're not firing, that aren't leaving, that aren't, you know, it's just, we'll just go forward forever pretending that no matter what goes wrong, it's something that was from somebody else's fault. Okay. So this comes out today, and I immediately messaged Charlie, and I'm like, that is so funny. So again, like I said, we should be questioning that the first part might be true, since the DNI comes out and says that didn't happen. Denies the CIA raided Tulsi Gabbard's office. So I'm like, what? So, okay, is it possible that Tulsi Gabbard is hiding this somehow because they were embarrassed by the fact that some rogue CIA agency, which is what I think it kind of is, so like the real representation of what some kind of unelected power structure looks like, which is kind of where they're trying to go with this? Sure, I can see a world in which that absolutely makes sense. But so let's play the clip, and you'll see how this kind of comes together, and then we'll read through this article, because it just feels wrong the way that they presented this, the way it all went down in a very rapid sense. And ultimately, the way it seems to me is that Luna came out, made these arguments based on what somebody said in a whistleblower congressional hearing, and then just turned it into something that she made it sound like something else. And then the next day came and sort of walked it back. And then guess what? Jesse Waters deleted the tweet about it. So here's the actual clip, or actually, oh, you know what? I don't think I grabbed it. Here, this one here. And so this is Jesse Waters coming out and live with a former CIA agent saying, hey, breaking news, this just happened. And he deleted it. So you already know that happened. So this is something that he's arguing this was yesterday actually happened. And I mean, I'm sure you've gotten my sense already that I feel like this is, I mean, look, right now more than ever, in my entire time doing this, it is a valid consideration to go, was that just about trying to get us looking in a different direction? I'm not going to say I'm not going to tell you that's a fact. I don't know that. But like I said, considering that, I've never seen a more likely time for things like this to be just sort of like a pump fake. Look over there while something else happens.
John, the CIA just raided Tulsi Gabbard's office.
Now think about jumping in and making that argument to a CIA agent while you have yet to even check the information. Like, why do they, as new corporate media, get away with just screaming what someone yelled in their ear without even knowing what they're talking about? You know how much like negative attention we get, rightly so, in anybody in independent media if you ever do that, and yet they do it every day. The mainstream alternative do it every day, and they explode with more viewers because the system and the platforms are literally benefiting them if they lie in the right ways today. Really, kind of how it's always been.
Agents hauled out dozens of boxes, files on the JFK assassination and MK Ultra, the CIA mind control operation.
Yeah, just before Trump was going to give them to you. That's Luna's argument. He was just about to give it to you, and they swooped in and took it all. Like, there's only one version, and there's only one print copy? Don't we live in a technological age? Yeah, I'm sure that's not true.
Which she was in the process of declassifying. Today's whistleblower said it during his deposition, and Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna confirmed it moments ago.
What she said was what she thought he said. Luna is not a serious person. Most people in positions of power in this country seem to not be serious people to me. You can think about what that may mean. That's not the point right now. But what I think is quite obvious is that what he said is not what she is now claiming was the reality today. So it's embarrassing, isn't it? So was Luna trying to distract people? Was she just getting it wrong and then walking it back? Either of those could be the truth.
The reason why this is troubling is, A, there was an executive order that the president had directed the full declassification of JFK, but then also to the MK Ultra files. The CIA famously has said that, all documents were released and other documents had been destroyed. So these are allegedly those documents that apparently never existed.
Can the CIA overrule the president?
Wow. Well, you certainly got all pieces of an interesting story that will sure as hell get your followers to go, wow, red flashing light. Holy cow. The thing that I just heard. And they do the same thing you just did, Jesse. Well, as you go forward on this story, and here is his tweet that was deleted, by the way, just in case you want to see it. So he went and deleted the tweet that he posted that said, breaking, the CIA just raided her office. Holy smokes, with two red lights, because Jesse Waters knew it was that important and then deleted it. Well, here's what's interesting is Representative Anna Paulina Luna came out on the 29th of April and said, hearing on May 13th, MK Ultra House Oversight Task Force, it's all coming down. And people rightly were skeptical, but it's okay, interesting, right? Well, I'm curious. Well, first of all, if you aren't in the community of the independent media, you probably don't know that this is almost like the idea that stopped is a kind of an ongoing joke. The reality that this didn't stop was proven. Well, and let me be clear. If I remember correctly, I believe it was, I don't want to, off the top of my head, I'll probably get the dates wrong. The point is that years after they claimed it was done, there are documents that you can prove that it did not finish, but the arguments would be that it was petering out or that it was side projects. The point is that it did not stop. Now you can prove that. And MK Ultra was far more than just mind control. Or really more than trauma-based mind. Well, I guess, the point is there was sexual trauma-based mind control. There was drug-based. There were horrifying experiments they were doing to Americans in some cases, guys. And so all that's to be said that there's a whole lot of this that connects back to a lot of different topics. And on the 12th, one day before it was supposed to happen, she came out and said, and this is the day before she came out and said they stole all the documents, and says, our task force hearing on MK Ultra will be rescheduled for a later date. We're able to confirm one witness, but our other three witnesses, rightfully so, were hesitant to testify as they have legitimate concerns. Well, gee, then why did you wait until less than 24 hours before we all thought it was going to happen to go, hey, are you guys good to go? I'm sure that you could have done that before. I think you know where I'm going. She says, we will announce the new date soon, and I'm sure that will happen. And I said, I bet this never happens. And was never going to happen. Just my opinion. So all that to say, again, the idea that you can have this story come out and it gets shared across the mainstream alternative media, go look at every single one of them. Every one of them has their red light, holy cow, CIA thing. We know what they're trying to shut down, Trump giving you the truth. And most of them have their post up still. At least Jesse Waters has the nerve to, has the gall to, or whatever, the wherewithal to delete that tweet. But so Tulsi Gabbard comes out yesterday and says, didn't happen, or office anyway. A spokesperson for the Director of National Intelligence is denying claims that the CIA and the DNI director, Tulsi Gabbard's office, to seize dozens of boxes containing files related to MK Ultra program and assassination of Kennedy was raided. Olivia Coleman, press secretary for the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, referenced a since deleted post. It stretched out that line for some reason. Referenced a since deleted post by Jesse Waters. This is false. That's what they said. The CIA did not raid the DNI office. So they could be lying. And of course, then you have to stand back and go, well, the DNI is lying to us about some kind of weird internal war footing with the CIA. That's crazy. And that speaks to the same problem from a different perspective. It's all Trump's administration right now, right? So either way, that's pretty alarming. Or they just made it all up. And now here's what's interesting, though. The guy testifying is a different point, right? We may go into that deeper, not today because this is just an opening point. But the idea being he testified that there were boxes that were removed. But the idea, as it will say in here, that they burst in and seized it and it was a raid, were all the things that Luna added to the conversation that apparently Jesse Waters took at face value without due diligence. About an hour earlier, Republican Representative Paulina Luna of Florida clarified the CIA took documents that ODNI, the Office of Director of National Intelligence, has jurisdiction over. Yeah, and of course, because they're above they are the office, the Director of National Intelligence, all of them, right? But the argument is that's not the reality. That many, especially today with Gabbard, but in general, that the point a lot of people have considered is that the CIA itself has become sort of its own monster, and it's not necessarily managed exactly by the U.S. government. And I don't mean that as like somebody else, but more so it's just kind of like the deep state, its own tangential government that they work with in a way. Like that's just an idea, but you can watch the way that they, like for example, you can see during Syria's discussion where you had the CIA and State Department elements fighting each other. They're not even on the same page when it comes to their foreign policy. Now, the lawmaker previously told News Nation that she was notified that the CIA, quote, took documents out of the ODNI, multiple boxes pertaining to the JFK files as well as MKUltra. That's what was said. So all you got from him in the congressional testimony was that they took documents, not that they were stolen or raided or anything else. Here's what's interesting. Think about this. You have them, Luna, saying, we're about to break all of this down. Trump signs an executive order that says, we're going to show you everything. And then they come in and take the documents. Not stole, not raided, but clearly took them, and they're denying it was raided. So what I take from that is they let them take them. Then you can go, well, now we don't have them anymore. Now, I don't know if this was some lazy construct to make you think things were happening that weren't, or to distract you with some division, or that there is something. It doesn't bode well for the Trump administration. Luna told, lawmaker previously told News Nation she was notified that they took the documents. Luna told the outlet that the alleged incident was troubling because of an executive order from Trump, directing basically that, and then putting her theory out there, right? That, well, he put this executive order out there. That must be why they came and took the documents. But half the time I think people like Luna are so far outside the know that they might as well just be the mainstream alternative media. They're responding to what's in front of them and are laying into the partisan conspiratorial mindsets. Not that conspiratorial is wrong, but just that's what we're talking about. The theorizing about how people are conspiring, but doing it from a one-sided partisan view, which means you're never seeing the full picture. On Twitter, Luna shared a letter addressed to CIA Director John Ratcliffe asking him to preserve all existing and future records and materials related to the subjects. She referenced testimony. So at this point, realize by that point, that means that right now, all of the documentation is still well within the hands of the U.S. government and well within the hands of Donald Trump's administration. Of course, Ratcliffe being somebody he appointed. So why are we holding back? Because apparently her other people were worried about what they were going to say, which probably then do it anyway. Why don't you just release all the documentation? Why do we need you to put this dog and pony show together? Because that's exactly all they want to put out, in my opinion. And it says, she referenced testimony to the Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee that alleged the CIA had taken 40 boxes that were being processed for declassification. Right, again, but you could read that's why they let them take them. They literally say, come get these out of our office so we don't have to expose what we all did together. The CIA, which is under the oversight of the ODNI, has not commented on the allegations, other than saying there was no raid. Quote, they are allegedly those documents that apparently never existed, which you just heard Luna say. And it's just doing her best to tap into the blindly assumptive, conspiratorial mainstream alternative media. And again, conspiratorial is not the bad word in all that. The point, though, is that what she's trying to say is the ones that never existed. Well, what do you mean? We don't even know what those are. We've never seen them. So now you're saying that things that they were told never existed have been proven to exist, but now they're gone and we can't prove that. Doesn't that seem like a deliberately opaque rabbit hole for you to fall into and never come out of? And by the way, not even truly the hole that's going towards the information of MKUltra either. She later clarified her remarks on Twitter, writing the CIA, quote, took documents that they have jurisdiction over. Also, she says this has not happened today and was not a raid. However, it did take place, and we are just being made aware of it based on reporting. Okay, well, funny how quickly that story changed. Luna claims appear to originate from CIA whistleblower James Erdman, who said during a Senate Homeland Security Committee hearing on Wednesday that the agency had taken about 40 boxes related to JFK and MKUltra. But if it was Wednesday and it's Friday today, it's funny how, I want you to think about how the media apparatus works. That's very public information that was stated, whether no one's watching those or not, it's information that's out there. It's on Twitter, whatever else, but it takes a certain grouping of people that apparently have allowed the algorithmic allowance to get things to be seen, and who make a point, who then let it rip through that's what happens. And we all see it. It just kind of reverberates. But if this was an organic ecosystem, it wouldn't be the same people doing the same things, it's not how that works. And so my point is, like we're going to get to in a second, about even the Honduras Gate point or the ferret nanoparticle point. That's more the one I'm thinking of right now. It's something we've been screaming about for 4 years? And doing a lot of work on, having conversations with people like Catherine Austin Fitz, who was just on Tucker Carlson, or plenty of others who have lots of reach, ourselves included. And it still doesn't get talked about until suddenly it's sort of like this thing that certain people point to. And I find that very revealing. And we'll go through that in a second. On this point, I just think it's interesting to think about how it all played out and how many times we're lied to by these same people. Now, to go into that point about ferret and nanoparticles and injections and the whole thing, I want to start with a clip, actually, from the Joe Rogan podcast news platform. And it's weird because it's not about Joe Rogan. It's a Tommy Lauren podcast, apparently, with John Rich. And I'm a little blown away by what he says right here. And I shouldn't be surprised. This is what we all know that's happening. And on all sides of partisanship, guys, they will willingly ignore something this large and I guess casually discuss it like it's I'm trying to say it without getting it. The bottom line is that he's saying that Trump knows these vaccines are hurting people and doesn't say anything about it. Do we all not know that? How can we possibly not know that? And so, but what he says in there blows me away. I'll play the clip and then I'll read 5 times Augustin. It says, and rightly so. He very much calls him out, or calls out at least people that aren't making this clear. But what he says, I feel like I'm embarrassed for anybody saying what John Rich is saying, acting like it's somehow normal to just not make this clear to your millions of followers.
A conservative is not an interchangeable word with being a Republican.
Oh, look at that. Something we actually share our opinion on. But you see, you understand, in my opinion, why they're making points like that, because it's like when you saw the Patriots, right? We see the two-party illusion. Now we're the Patriots. Who are you voting for? Trump, Republicans. They also call themselves Patriots, and all those over there, rhinos over there. So essentially now you've got Democrats, rhinos, and Patriots. So still two-party illusion. It's just a weird manipulation of the same system. So the same idea is that if you decouple yourselves from what you claim or no, it's just at the end of the day, I agree with the point. But if you're still saying conservative simply means you're only left and right, then you're still trapped in the same thing. You're just giving yourself a new name. You're carving out another grouping that still votes for Republicans. That's all that means. So when I say conservatives and Republicans, I'm talking about team sport Republicans who are acting like he is and acting like what they're doing in the team sport game. And then the real conservatives that understand that they have conservative values. They believe in things that align with those values, but don't blindly fall for team sport politics, who are right now very angry that Trump lied to them about everything. So apparently I would argue Rich is a Republican, because otherwise, how would you not be outraged about all the things he's lying to you about? Right. But maybe he is. Maybe I'm missing that. I don't think that's the case, though.
They are two different things. They really are. I mean, Lindsey Graham is not a conservative.
I know you've had your beefs with
him.
him.
I can't stand him.
He's okay that Trump loves him and that Trump endorses him. Why those things don't matter, I have no idea.
He's a warmonger. He's one of the most disgusting people I've ever had the displeasure of sitting across a table from.
She calls it out.
He called me a conspiracy theorist in front of the President of the United States, yelling at me across the table.
Yep. Who apparently didn't back him up and laughs about it and ignores the point that was made within it, as he'll tell you. But yay, Donald Trump, next time again.
Swishing his wine around his third glass of Chardonnay.
Oh, and also don't forget that most of these people were all about whoever Trump pointed to, regardless, because Rubio is Graham, right? Half of his administration is exactly like Lindsey Graham with different hair and different accents. That's what we're talking about. It's the same person with the same policies doing the same things. So Graham is just a more outwardly ridiculous person in a lot of ways, but Trump supports all of them. How do you possibly not go, well, then that makes Trump a liar, a dishonest person, somebody who doesn't have any integrity, somebody who doesn't follow through with what he says, all of it.
And Tommy, I tore his arm off and beat him in the head with it.
Somehow.
Right in
What
front
was
of the
Trump's
president.
reaction to that, by the way? Because
Trump?
he likes Lindsey Graham, and I don't really get it.
What do you mean you don't get it? He likes him. Well, if you're confused by that, well, maybe you should reflect on why you still support a man who supports a monster, warmongering lunatic. I mean, it's not that hard to put together, but it's willful blindness for people that believe in partisanship. The left does the exact same thing. That's what I hope the honest conservatives and honest liberals can see, is that the team sport partisan people are identical in the way they act about their partisan politics.
He said, I got through. We were talking about the vaccine because Trump had asked me, why are people booing me at my rallies when I bring up the vaccine?
You don't think he knows that?
That's a heavy duty question.
That's a big one.
Would you?
Yeah, but think about that. What do you mean? So if you know it's a big question, which he'll go into say, that means you know that it's killing people and they're still supporting it, and that's not enough for you to at least question your support for this man? How do you even make sense of that?
You want him asking you that?
I would. I would.
And you'd tell him the truth.
Oh, 100%.
And so I did.
I dang well hope you would. Anybody that would say no, he says he does too, should be laughed out of the room. No, I would lie about this monumental thing that we all care about because I like Trump. That's what the argument ultimately, because I support him or because whatever it is. He must know what he's doing.
And that's when Lindsey Graham come up out of his chair. If you listen to conspiracy theorists like John Rich, Mr. President, the Democrats are going to take credit for what you did and beat you in the next election with it.
And very clearly, Donald Trump took his advice. And I mean, literally obvious and clear. I mean, he's doing that. He's actually said things like that. So he took Lindsey Graham's advice over you, John Rich, and you still support him. That's something to reflect on.
And I looked over at Lindsey Graham and I said, do not interrupt me when I'm speaking. Do you understand me?
I still somehow.
And he looked at me like that. He said,
not that John Rich is not capable of that. Like he honestly seems exactly the kind of person that would stand his ground in that situation. Something tells me it just didn't happen that way. That's just my gut.
I didn't mean to disrespect you. I said, but you did. So anyway, what I was saying, and I finished telling the president, I said, even in my own family, there's people now that have heart damage, that have all kinds of problems. Country singers that I know that can't tour anymore because their heart rate can't go under 130 beats a minute. Like they've got myocarditis, pericarditis, all kinds of problems.
Yeah, all the things that we were calling out in the first year that we were censored for by Patreon, by PayPal, by everybody, by YouTube. Then we're right. Very right. Everyone knows that. Doesn't change anything.
I said, everybody out in your audience out there knows somebody that was damaged by that, and that we consider Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, the W.
Well, you're watching this in the chat because I'm going to make a point. Feel free to go somewhere else. But we're in the middle of this, and we're going to make a point about this if you want to pay attention.
WHO, the CDC, Fauci, all the rest of them to be a bunch of depopulationist, homicidal maniacs.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree.
And Trump goes, unbelievable, I can't even believe this. And then when I shouted Lindsey Graham down, Trump thought that was one of the most hilarious things he had ever seen.
I'm sure he did.
It's so funny. Oh, you showed him. Now here, children, take some more COVID shots. Oh, Lindsey Graham, let me endorse you for your election. You think he doesn't know that? I mean, I just think that's embarrassing. Like you're debasing yourself to stand and to support somebody who clearly does not care what you think, clearly does not support your choices, and just tells you that he does. That's pretty embarrassing.
Every time I see the president now, he goes, John, I've got to get another dinner scheduled and invite Lindsey because that was one of the greatest takedowns I've ever seen.
Yeah, let me do it again so you can make fun of Lindsey and we can laugh. And then nothing will change still. Like, why do you feel like he's placating you? Well, let's get a dinner. We can all laugh together. But I'm still selling those shots, though, right? That's cool.
I said, if I'd have known you were enjoying it, I would have actually said what I was thinking. He goes, oh, we got to put that together again. He looked at Lindsey Graham. He goes, Lindsey, I could be wrong, but I don't think John Rich likes you very much. Right, John? I mean, I could be wrong, but wow, what a takedown. And Lindsey Graham is just looking at me like, oh, my.
We can't think about what he was just saying. And this is the conversation. Like this, I don't know if this is intentional or not, but my sense, this is dumbed down for people to. So you basically end up laughing about how funny Trump is. And, oh, we all hate Lindsey Graham, even though he supports him. So you just almost kind of laugh over the insanely important thing you just discussed, that he knows he's hurting people and it doesn't matter. Or you told him and he doesn't care. It's just, my God.
You can't have fear of politicians. Listen, I'm a regular American citizen. They work for us. You don't interrupt me when I'm talking. No. I shut him down.
Oh, yeah, you're tough and strong. Good thing you didn't care what you had to say. You know, who knows? I'm sure he could beat Lindsey Graham up. Is that what we care about? Are we going, yeah, you showed him with your loud language, and then they all went and did what they did anyway? Like, I don't know why this is what matters to him.
It was total disrespect, and a lot of them have that attitude. Arrogant.
And I should be clear. What I mean is why it matters to him in the context of the point he's talking about. Why would that be the thing you talk about? the laughing at Lindsey Graham when you just made it clear. It's the same point. I just think that's staggering. And I would even argue it may not even be some deliberately dishonest thing. I just think people lose themselves when it comes to partisanship.
Sit down and shut up, you stupid American citizen. We know what we're doing and you don't.
Exactly what Trump and his team are doing right now. Just like Biden did, just like Obama did, just like Bush did. Some people can see that.
A lot of them have that attitude. And so for me, and you've seen me do it, and I know you're the same kind of person, we don't respond well to that.
No.
Right?
Especially over the COVID thing. That's one
Especially
thing.
with
Like, if you
COVID.
want to round me up, do the COVID thing.
Yeah, do the COVID talk.
Oh my God. Right, because that's all that matters, right? Trump didn't order the thing that but he did though. But who cares about facts? Who cares about the facts when it comes down to a narrative that allows you to pretend that he's not the person that we all know that he is? Just like Biden, just like Obama, just like Bush, just in case there's still somebody new tuning in. So here's what Prime Times August said. I've heard this story before, but what John Rich reveals and confirms here again is that Trump knows the COVID shot has injured and killed so many, which he has to. I mean, like I always open up a possibility for that he's somehow in this, that he's so utterly cowed and handled that he just doesn't. But Twitter and just being in conversations with people like it must, but he could just go, well, those are Democrat lies. I can see a world in which that's possible. I don't believe that though. I think that he has enough information around him and he wants, I think Trump is so obsessed with what people think about him. So he would want to know. And I think that means he's choosing like 5 times August degrees for his legacy, for his ego. But he knows the COVID shots have injured and killed. Still, he chooses to keep his mouth shut, keep the shot on the market. Still to this day, he chooses to ignore the damage done, chooses to not acknowledge or help those hurt by it, all for the sake of his own ego. Now, whether you agree with that statement, for some reason, you can decide why, but he's doing all of that. Or if you argue he somehow is not able to see what all of you believe, what Maha was built around, you got to be some serious incompetence there if that's what you think is the reality, and that should speak for itself. It's terrible, he says. It's evil. It's a crime. And I just don't know how any American can look past that and still give that guy their trust after hearing a story like this. That's my point. So either it's a kind of mental, brainwashing social engineering dynamic for people that actually care about these things, but then choose to not care when the moment comes to support Trump, or they're lying to you and they don't care. I just don't see a middle ground. Trump's solution to the problem was to just not talk about it anymore, to not pull the shots, not address the nation, not hold anybody accountable. Even though, by the way, there's still people that argue he ended mRNA shots because they just go off what the narrative is. That's it. He did not. I'll include the show yet again, where it goes over all of this, including the document that was released by RFK Jr. that states explicitly that the self-amplifying shots from Amplitude and Arcturus are going to continue. And those are mRNA self-amplifying shots. And they're going to continue the other variations in it outside of vaccines that aren't self-amplifying in those two categories, in food and elsewhere. That's not my opinion. It's written down in his release from the HHS. It's all in this document. So we showed it, or in the show rather. He could have said long ago he was lied to and was put in a terrible situation. He could do that today and it would only benefit him, guys. Like if he literally came out today, people like me would say the obvious. Why did he wait until now? He let children take it up until now. And that would still be a valid argument. But still, I would argue he would gain more in a benefit from going, just even pretending I just now realized. I just got a new document. I can't show you. I now know the Democrats tricked me. Whatever. It would work. But he's still yet to do that. And he still acts like it's his legacy that he saved the world from COVID. I don't know how you could actually take that seriously with what we know. He could have said it long ago, did not. He didn't. In fact, he kept doubling down, insisting the shot saved millions. He still does. After being confronted, he was distributing poison. So let there be no doubt, he writes, he knows and has known, which means he was either part of the plan from the beginning or quite simply just doesn't care that he became a part of the plan. There's no other option. And for that, he is just as guilty and corrupt for COVID crimes as anyone else. That's why I appreciate his work. 5 times August. He doesn't shy away from calling it out. Now, keeping that in mind, this is an interesting article that just came out. You might have seen it. And I find it insane that this is being talked about and being couched actually in a weird way. The Daily Mail, this is from yesterday. Shocking files reveal global elites. Now, the right term would be elitists. They're not better than you. They believe they are. Global elites implies they're better than you. Explored remote human cell control. Well, it's just even the framing is this is an old study that we've talked about many times. 2016, genetically engineered magnetoprotein remotely controls brain and behavior. This is from The Guardian. This is ferritin nanoparticle injections. Rather, the study was on ferritin injections or other introductions of ferritin nanoparticles and using a few different things: magnogenetics, radiogenetics, and optogenetics. And that is about using those things, light, radio signals, magnetism, to create a response in your body remotely. I think that was insane. And of course, then we talked about this during COVID-19 about possibilities, not that we could prove, but that was a very weird thing. And it was disregarded as absolute ridiculousness, even though you could look at it, even though you could look at the Rockefeller Institute, look at their own study, flipping a switch inside the head. I mean, you guys know, those who watch this, I brought this up like 17 times over the years. And this goes into it, I mean, explicitly goes into the reality. With new technology, scientists are able to exert wireless control over brain cells. Now, in this article, like I've gone over 1,000 times, I mean, it's right at the bottom. I didn't highlight it, but anyway, the article goes over it explicitly that you can, whether there was examples in this as well as this, or the study itself that's actually in the article of, should actually grab it. Let me see. It's right there. Of using, I think it was cockroaches and mice, and ultimately controlling their actions. Now, the main part of it is being able to use these particles to create action in cells, to cause your body to, either produce a certain genetic or other, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm going to go read through it, but the point, it's always good for me to actually remember this stuff too, since it continues to be relevant. The idea being that, like, they use glucose and insulin, and that you can use these signals to create your body, or a signal, or trigger your body to release those chemicals, right? So in this case, insulin or glucose. The point would be that ultimately it could create the situation where it could stop you from having a problem, or it could drop your level so low that you die. And it's all right in the study. And this is with mice, and they even talk about it being applicable to it's just anything that can be injected with these nanoparticles that is a living being. Okay, and so what we're talking about is a very, very rare, unless they're lying about all of it, which we should consider, question everything. They're talking about being able to do this back in 2016, 2017. And then we're talking about the larger conversation of how far the tech has gone, and the idea of just simply asking whether or not this is something that has been or could be applied in humans. The answer is yes, by the way, but the question is could be, or have been rather. That's what we don't know. And so we're getting into all this. The new article comes out talking about this. And I'm just kind of like, wow, it's like, if the Guardian write about it all this time ago, why are they writing about this like it's something unknown? You know my thoughts. Let's go through this and we'll go deeper into it. And you can, Gareth Ike's the one that shared this. This is where I saw it. He said, the title is Shocking Files Reveal Global Elites Explored Remote Human Cell Control. And he says, explored. It's a weird way to say created a fake pandemic and injected it into large portions of the world's population. Well, that you can consider if you think that's the reality. It's something we should consider. The lipid nanoparticle conversation, as always, we're talking about nanoscale lipid fatty membranes, not necessarily technology, or rather like robot, if you want to go that direction, which is archaic for what we're talking about. But when you overlap this, we'll come back to with something like Charles Lieber's work. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, it's right here. That's the one I want to show you. The original title, not the new one they've changed it to, which is also telling, but virus-sized transistors, 2011, talking about using nanotechnology to create exactly what we're talking about. Now, the adaptation of his work is using the ferritin nanoparticles to be injected and use the same kind of dynamic. We saw this. I mean, this is where they discuss the technology applied for the COVID shot. But to solve the problem he was dealing with, he coated the hairpin nanowire with a fatty lipid layer. The device was easily pulled into the cell, right? And the point is, as he says, when a man-made structure is as small as virus or bacteria, it can behave the way biological structures do. So as always, my point back then was, well, what if this is something they created, they lost control of, or, created something to have a certain outcome that then wasn't able to be contained? Maybe that was something we're dealing with. Not that I'm arguing that, but it's just interesting to think about that this is, the fact that this was never brought into the conversation, this or any number of other points that were very, very relevant to that conversation, it shows you a choice by the corporate media. And then when it gets acknowledged and they shout you down as crazy, it makes it even more clear. Like, for example, the graphene oxide point, which I still argue was wildly lied about by people like Stu Peters and trying to make you think it was 99%. That was obviously not the reality. The point was that you could look at their own Pfizer documentation and show that there was a residual carryover of graphene oxide because they used it in tests during the process. That's a provable fact. I think it was the expose is the one that actually broke that as far as I could see, and it was undeniably clear. It's written in Pfizer's documentation. Now, all that means is there's a residual carryover, so it is in there. Does that mean it's problematic? Does it mean it's dangerous? You can decide all that for yourself. I argue yes. I argue that a tiny amount of that is something that's with what we know it can accomplish. I'm not going to get into all that today, but those that know, that is the technological step that they've been arguing for years about using that in vaccines, about using it in water to be able to manage and like monitor metrics of water, or to kind of like gamify the world and keep track of things. All real, guys. Now, the question was, back to the point, is whether or not that was something utilized in this. But the reality was all of these things were shouted down when brought up. Not saying we knew, but going, could this be? And they laughed at you, even though it was something that was real. I think that speaks volumes. At the very least, that these people are so lost in what they think they know that they are, the corporate media and the mainstream alternative will only look and acknowledge something when they're told they're allowed to by people they think are their betters. That's why independent media tends to be ahead of most of these stories today, because they're controlled in a sense they don't even realize half the time. But getting into this point, a resurfaced patent. Oh, and here's many of these I saw, by the way. Here's one of them. They just simply said, they can remotely control your cells with 5G and mRNA jabs, which is not actually what that shows, by the way. Guys, if you read the patent and look at the information, I don't disagree with where that likely leads, or whether or not it already could be utilized that way. What I'm trying to say is that it is not what the information actually relays and what we can see today. The idea that 5G can overlap with these kind of things is something that we talked about right in the beginning, and is something you should consider. But that you can look at these studies and say that's what it was, is, I would argue, the packaging of what we think might be the reality with what we have in front of us. Maybe he's right. And I would even argue it's most likely something that is going in that direction. But I question whether it was done in a way to make it disregarded. Interesting. But so this patent is something we talked about. The presence of, it provides methods and composites for the cell function, all the stuff we're talking about. But so the idea being, it's the same one, Rockefeller Institute, that this is being packaged as something that aligns with a more abstract, unverifiable point. I simply said the last American Vagabond has been trying to draw attention to all this very public information for years now. Glad it is being allowed to be seen for whatever reason. And I included a clip made by Brock about this larger discussion. We go through a lot of these things. We'll come back to that. I'll show you all the different points, going back 2023 and before, where we talk about all this. This one's 2021. Biodigital convergence, COVID magnogenetic ferritin vaccines, 2021. So here's what they're calling this. A resurfaced patent awarded to an elite biomedical research institution in New York City details technology described as enabling the remote control of cell function. Granted to the Rockefeller University in 2018, the patent describes, and again, remember, this is what's interesting, guys. This is talked about in 2017, right? The Guardian covered the Rockefeller Institute's research in 2016. So you can look at one of two ways. Either they were doing this without any patented information, which wouldn't shock me, or that we know that they were already doing this a long time before that, and for whatever reason, this thing is couching it in 2018. You can decide. The patent describes using tiny engineered particles called nanoparticles that can be directed towards specific types of cells, either from outside the cell or by being placed inside of it, like injections. When exposed to radio waves, and that's specifically about this, also that they couch this on just the radio genetics, not the reality. If you read the studies themselves of where it's currently at, or was, and now even further, which is magnetogenetics, and even further optogenetics. By the way, something that the U.S. government just started their own program on, the DARPA's Generative Optogenetics Program, which is where we rehash this same conversation on December 17, 2025. Showing you that this was the extension of that same work. And it's very alarming. Effectively, as you'll see even more as we go through this, flashing pulse lights from your phone, from your computer, if you have these things in your body, will create a response. That's a fact. That should be alarming as hell, knowing that we were all given things that we know were manipulated and dangerous. Not that I can say provably that this is something going on, but realize this could be something that's aerosol, something put in the air. I'm genuinely not trying to scare people. But I'm not going to shy away from saying something I know is a fact. just because it sounds crazy, like we never did during the Israel conversation, COVID-19, or just about anything else that we've been consistently right about. My point is that you understanding what optogenetics is and how it could be utilized. Let's just say you've got injections of these ferritin nanoparticles, then flashing pulses created a certain way could cause those things to cause reactions in your body, however they're programmed. I find that to be insane with the kind of people we see in power right now and the kind of stuff we know they're doing. So back to this. And it says when exposed to radio waves, and they leave it at that. Again, you'll see why that's the lowest part of this. Then they're way past that at this point. The particles heat up and activate temperature sensitive channels within the targeted cells. Well, I would argue, I don't want to say that that's the only, they're all utilized in ways that can go forward technologically. I just argue, in my opinion, to make it as clear as possible, that the optogenetics is kind of the one that seems to be leaned into at the highest level, that radio waves were what were utilized, but still could be done remotely in the same way. But it goes on to say the heat then triggers a biological response inside the cell, such as switching on certain genes or prompting a production of proteins. Now that alone, guys, because one of the things you're getting right now in the conversation out there is that, this is being misrepresented. It's not about controlling everything. It's about causing small reactions in cells to stop diseases. Okay, sure. Well, both those things are applicable when you look at the deeper part of the research, but let's just take that argument. So let's say it's not about controlling what you think and do, which I'm not arguing necessarily, but what you're saying is that you can have, so let's just say you took a shot, COVID shot, whatever else, and it happened to have ferritin nanoparticles in it, or, whatever else you want to think about. It got into your body somehow. So then the reality being, whether it's radio waves or magnetism or optogenetics, it can't just be any of them. It's about how it's applied, but let's just say it's about radio waves in this case. That can be sent, which would then cause whatever cells that are affected to create certain genes. Like, think about the conversation we're having about what that means. This is genetic manipulation, but then prompting the production of proteins. So by the very point could be this could produce spike proteins in your body. This could produce any number of alarming things we've talked about. Or it could produce more ferritin particles. I believe that's the reality. My point in that is that I believe we're talking about the overlap with the protein, but I'm not a scientist in all this. My point overall is that this is something within the science, the research they've shown is the reality. So spike protein is something we are aware of, that we all are very concerned about, but you can apply any number of proteins that can be dangerous to you, that cause reactions in your body. So maybe it's not controlling everything you do, but it can cause you to get sick and cause you to feel a different way. It can cause you to act a different way. According to the patent, and it's all in the research, the technology could potentially be used to treat a wide range of diseases. Yeah, sure. And Neuralink can make your arms move again, but can also do a lot of terrifying things. And disorders by remotely activating specific cellular functions inside the body. I mean, even the idea that anybody can have your body do things while they're remotely doing it from outside your body sounds ridiculously terrifying to me. While the technology could potentially revolutionize healthcare, potentially, same thing I said about the COVID shots, the patent has sparked fears and conspiracy theories online because of the university's historic ties to the influential Rockefeller family. Wait a minute. So 2016, they're literally doing this research on living creatures, and you're acting like the patent that we just stumbled across is causing people to freak out because we don't know what it's about. You see my point? This is May 14, 2026. This is being pointed to now, I think, to disregard, to redirect away. Take it for what you will. This makes me more worried that now something is going to go in this direction. The dynasty has long been, the Rockefellers, the subject of claims alleging secretive influence over global politics. I mean, are you really going to pretend like it's not just objectively proven that Rockefeller, Rothschild dynasties, I mean, any of them, look at any major family today that's even tangential to politics. They influence the outcome, lobbying, super PACs, or just literally being wealthy. And so the idea that these it's not some kind of conspiracy theory. You could point to the Flexner report. You could talk about a number of things from either side of these families and show that they 100%, the Standard Oil conversation, that they created things that changed our way our world works. So it's just funny that they'll act like it's crazy stuff. But it says the dynasty has long been the subject of claims alleging secretive influence over global politics, finance, and the creation of a so-called new world order. You mean the thing that I just laugh at how the new world order, like Trump just said that. Pompeo just said that. Reagan has said it before. People everywhere, the new order for the world, they're telling you they're doing that right now, but it's conspiracy theory. However, there is no evidence that the technology was designed for mind control. Well, I'm not sure I don't see somebody saying mind control. I argue that's a way to make it sound crazy. But if what we're talking about is something that can effectively change the way your body functions, and by the way, if you actually read the research, they argue that this is ultimately possible to control action, then you are talking about that. But what I find funny is they're not cloning to somebody saying that. They're just going, this patent that's real about these kind of things that control things the way, but crazy mind control or population surveillance. The patent describes potential medical applications aimed at treating diseases. Of course, because no patent has ever been used outside of the way they frame it, right? That's just madness. What they're talking about is exactly what those things can do. But because they say it's not, then people will disregard it. Even so, social media users have speculated online that technology could theoretically be misused for neurological or behavioral manipulation. You mean despite the fact that it literally says that in their own research? It says, despite the patent focusing on medical research, despite the patent that wrote out a one-paragraph outline of what they're doing or whatever it is, we're going to ignore the long years of, you get the point, guys. They're telling you in their own research that that's what it is capable of doing. But to listen to Daily Mail, because they're really respectable. One ex-user wrote, the global elites' plans have been blown wide open. Does the patent registered in the name of Rockefeller University spell the end of human biological independence? By the way, on a side note, I find it actually crazy, especially with the way Twitter is utilized today, that they didn't even link to that person. You're literally going to take someone's quote from Twitter and just use it and then not cite the person? I mean, they may think it doesn't matter. Oh, just a bunch of idiots on Twitter. But what's the difference? If it was Elon Musk, you'd link to him, wouldn't you? Same difference. It's just they just don't have any scruples. They don't have any integrity, in my opinion. Most of these platforms today do not. They wanted to use the point without giving the person credit because I bet you can link. Well, I think I actually grabbed it now that I think about it. Make sure. No, maybe I didn't. Thought I did. Oh, well, I'm going to leave it there just in case. I don't have to try to search it down. I'm pretty sure I looked that up and then I think like I lost it. But either way, the point was that the person said that, simply going, does this matter? The claims circulating online are not supported by the evidence presented in the patent itself. Oh, cool. Great due diligence, Daily Mail, because apparently the patent is the only thing we have. Not the real world experiments, not the actual utilization of this on mice and cockroaches, and just what they wrote in that patent, because that's usually the full picture, isn't it? The patent describes a system called nanoparticle induction circuit excitation, or NICE, as we've talked about many times, which uses radio waves and tiny magnetic particles to remotely activate specific cells inside the body. In scientific terms, the patent's use of the phrase remote control of cell function refers to remotely activating biological responses to targeted cells using radio frequency signals. But here's what's funny to me as they try to make this very specific. You could easily take a step back and say, okay, well, it's talking about remote control, which obviously means what you think it means, of cell function. Okay, well, so if hypothetically you could inject somebody's body full of this stuff and then remotely control all of the cell function, does that not amount to, yeah, I mean, obviously, and it's just a funny thing that they try to make it small. Remotely activating biological responses. Well, biological responses are what run your body. In targeted cells using radio frequency signals and the others we talked about. That activation can trigger biological responses such as turning genes on, which are, I mean, the possibilities with that are insanely endless. We're talking about any kind of genetic change or genetic turning on genes in your body can cause any number of things. And again, my point would be that whatever they decide to tailor it towards is what you could accomplish. And it says producing proteins, like a spike protein, releasing hormones, insulin, activating neurons. Yeah, that totally can't cause someone to be hurt or die. Like just the insulin point is what they discuss in the study, or one of the ones they focus on. If you can do that, then you can kill somebody. That's objectively obvious because like a diabetic would need those or they might die, right? Especially if it's severe. So if you can spike that or collapse it, you can do the same thing. And that's just one example of any number of processes. If you can do that, you could probably, I mean, I'm not going to, I'll stick with what it says. The point is, it's pretty obvious to think about a biological process being anything in your body that you could affect. You could easily do any number of things. Scientists engineered cells so the TRPV1 channels would open when nearby nanoparticles were heated by radio waves. And we've talked about this in our previous shows. It's of all the things listed before. Effectively allowing researchers to switch cellular activity on remotely. The patent describes several experiments to mice designed to test whether scientists could remotely trigger biological changes inside the body using radio waves and nanoparticles. In one study, researchers implanted specially engineered cells into mice that were designed to release insulin when activated. That's my point, right? So then you have the introduction of the ferritin nanoparticle dynamic, and then that is, now you've been primed, that can happen. Now, this is not just you throw these things out in the world and you can do whatever you want. That's what seems to be in some way being misrepresented by people. The reality, as we highlight in the show, is that this is, so again, the hypothetical that you took a COVID shot, which means you introduced something in your body, which we probably are aware of, that was not what we were told. But who knows what? So the argument could be that it was something like this, cells designed to do any number of things. And then, as George Webb and I discussed in a previous interview, that this was the primer, and that we're waiting for the secondary part of it, the drill, whatever the next part is. They've got the platform set up. Now they need to come in with whatever the second part is. And that's the argument by a lot, for just consideration. This is something that was done. And then the next thing will be whatever they need to do to release whatever, to create the outcome. In this case, it was designed to release insulin. Maybe it was designed to kill people. Any number of things. Now, people will always reflectively go, this is just too crazy because we don't want to believe it's possible. This is not something hypothetical. It's being discussed in their open research, and we know that's what's possible. So the only thing you should be balking at is that they might not do it. They would never want to kill all of us, but except if you look at what they're doing around the world, that's just not true. But if you're balking at the fact that this is not true or that it's not possible, well, you're just wrong. Again, they could be lying about it, but everything they're telling you is something that they're telling you they've already done and utilized in real world stuff. When the mice were exposed to radio frequency magnetic field, the nanoparticles heated up, activated the cells, causing them to release insulin. Researchers said this lowered the animal's blood sugar levels without surgery or implanted electrical devices. The patent also describes experiments involving brain cells linked to reward and feeding behavior. See, so now we're talking about behavior. And it says scientists said the technology could remotely activate specific neurons in the midbrain and hypothalamus, areas associated with appetite, motivation, dopamine signaling. Or no, so now we're really going to pretend like you can't create the drive to do something? How is that not controlling action? It is, to a degree anyway. I mean, then think about where this has gone. This is a 20 or almost a decade old, or more than a decade old. The patent further states that the nanoparticles could either be injected into the body or genetically engineered directly into the cells using ferritin, a naturally occurring iron storage protein found in humans. So the point would be that this is already naturally occurring, but if you read the Rockefeller Institute study or the Guardian report on it, part of this would be introducing more ferritin nanoparticles to create this response. And there's different versions of the way they discuss this. So that's like they said, genetically engineering these things. So if you're talking about doing things that cause your body to have certain genetic responses, maybe that's what's already happening. According to the patent, now one other additional point for those that are just too overwhelmed with the conspiratorial opinions, you have to understand, this doesn't have to be some grandiose thing. I think it's pretty obvious that it is, but the point would be you could have all of this happening and Trump saved the world, but you had Fauci who secretly did this in one location, and that got misrepresented as everywhere, or whatever you want to talk about. The idea that it's impossible that somebody could have done this, at least in some locations, it's impossible to claim it's impossible. That's what's so crazy is easily somebody could have done this. The question is, did they? Can they? Would they? Maybe you disagree. Maybe you think it didn't. But we know it can happen. And that's what worries me about things like the moral bioenhancement argument, right? Where they argue, and this is one of many, that they shouldn't tell us that if they decide that, let's say giving everybody ferritin nanoparticle shots to make sure that they're all more happy in their lives and that that'll help society and stop climate change or whatever you're talking about, that it should be done covert. That's the argument here. This is to say that it's morally preferable for compulsory moral bioenhancement to be administered without the recipients knowing that they're receiving the enhancement. Then he argues it would be more in line with public health ethics because we're saving the world. Are you? Or have you been fooled? Or are you lying? This is everywhere. This is what and this comes out. They made the same arguments for putting lithium in the water, whether it happened or not. You can decide. But they made those arguments, guys. Continuing, we'll go into some of the stuff that we talked about here. Oh, these were just the post here. This is actually just the one that I shared. And this is a clip that Brock made. You want to watch through that? It goes into a lot of detail. Here's the actual post. So I'm not going to go through this again. I mean, frankly, I should to make it, but it's just, I have seriously probably about 10 times. We've gone through this. We've talked about it very extensively, sometimes just a preview. You guys have all seen it, but the information is here. It's right in front of you. If you want to go through it yourself, you can verify everything I just said. And this, in the study. And then this is some of the stuff we did. May 17, 2021. Magnogenetic ferritin vaccines. Now, that was the point, though. It wasn't, those weren't radio wave elements. There's elements of that in the research. What I was talking about was the magnogenetic side of it, the magnets, or the magnetism, which was, by the way, was interesting that became a weird little conspiracy point during COVID-19. Maybe that was because they wanted to make sure that it heard magnogenetic, that we thought, oh, that's that crazy theory. Or maybe it was just an organic thing that happened that had nothing to do with this, but this is also happening. Consider all these things. It's so obvious that stuff happens. And so many people are just so resistant to even asking these kind of questions because I get it. It's uncomfortable. Who wants to live in a world where people would, too late. You're already living in that world. Better to know what's going on, I argue. This one is one of all these are shows we've done in the past. Well, this one is simply the new, this was a new spike ferritin nano. Let's see if I can actually grab that real quick. Let's see right here. And my point, I'm actually glad I remember this because this is something to add to the story. These are not just experiment background things. They are working on COVID-19 shots that are ferritin nanoparticle shots. They're working on universal flu shots that are ferritin nanoparticle shots. All of them are real and they're all actually happening. Doesn't that worry anybody that we're talking about the SARS-CoV-2 ferritin nanoparticle vaccine? Now, who knows if they pivoted to whatever the new thing is, but the point is some hantavirus SARS-CoV-2, whatever, ferritin particle shot. The point is that we're talking about giving people shots that are packed with ferritin nanoparticles, whatever your argument is. And then secondarily, those could be utilized for something down the line or programmed to do other things. Yes. Now, the question is, would they? You could decide that, but the answer is yes. And that's wild to me. I made this point in 2016. Suddenly now it's being pointed to. Probably still won't get a lot of attention, but that's kind of the secondary point, isn't it? Why is it so hard to get these things provably in front of people when you know it's there, when it should be a gigantic story? If Tucker Carlson had made this point in 2016, it would be a wildly crazy bombshell that everyone will talk about for 6 months. You can answer that question for yourself. Gain of function's newest brain virus, which is what it was. It was something caused by this research. Genetically engineered proteins to control, everything. Now, that was an extension of the conversation of finding out that it wasn't just about ferritin nanoparticles. It was about basically genetically engineering proteins that could control whatever they designed it to. And then you can consider the point of using the ferritin nanoparticle technology to, what did we just read? Genetically engineer, or rather create genetic responses or create proteins in your body. Like that's arguing. And so then if you could take that step further and realize that if you can create proteins using that technology, and then you could research this and find out that they could use those genetically engineered proteins to control the way any number of processes work in your body, suddenly you realize it actually is about control. And this is not secret stuff, guys. Now, we talked about the Guardian article in this, but this one was a mod RNA, which is what they all are, ferritin nanoparticle, universal flu vaccine. That is very real. Oh, it's not in the title. Anyway, down there. I don't know if you guys noticed, by the way, that I've changed the way the bottom looks. I think it's easier for you guys to read. Let me know if you know what I'm talking about in the links I put below. Let me know if you prefer the old way. I can go back to that. But again, guys, this is where it is today. December 17, 2025. DARPA, under Trump's administration, is doing what's called generative optogenetics. Let me see if that actually, it's probably down here. Hold on. There we go. This is from DARPA's own website, and that's what it's talking about. What is generative optogenetics? Synthetic DNA and RNA molecules are foundational to the host of next-generation technologies crucial for national security and global well-being. That sure sounds like what the Democrats say. Isn't that funny? They are the same thing. Impacting everything from resilient supply chains and advanced materials manufacturing, sustainable agriculture. Generative optogenetics program seeks to overcome these challenges by pioneering a revolutionary approach, harnessing the power of light to direct the synthesis of DNA and RNA directly within living cells. Yeah, it's the same thing. Using light pulses. Now, if you want to look into James Giordano and the idea of what he told you during COVID, they were already utilizing neuro weapons and neuroscience on you, or the idea of what Catherine and I have talked about, this is what they argue is already happening. That you're, whether phones or computers or whatever else, and it's affecting the way you think and feel about things. You can decide whether you think that's real. It's worth looking into if you care. Because to me, they're capable of all this stuff. If you've been paying attention historically, not even just the administration, but your life, this is exactly what they do. So I hope you take the time to look into this. I'll include these as well. Like I said, the Guardian article, 2016, talking about exactly this, controls brain and behavior. Funny how that's fake news today. And again, back to the point of where now, if you don't remember this, Charles Lieber was the guy who was arrested. He is, I guess, still the leading nanotechnology expert on the planet. Seems relevant, doesn't it? He was arrested just before the COVID thing spun out for allegedly, they argue, for hiding payments from China. Now, right alongside him was a couple of Chinese guys that got caught bringing genetic material in their socks from Beth Israel Hospital to China. Now, all that spun out and he got arrested and claims of treason were everywhere. And then it got real quiet and nobody talked about it. And weirdly enough, while he was allegedly being investigated, he was still conducting experiments with China. I've talked about it. Zoe Smith made it clear. It was provable. So you're telling me a guy who's being charged with treason with China, the China that Trump's now working with, who 30 seconds before he told you was infiltrating the country, you're telling me that you're going to let him work with China. You're going to continue to work on the same research that we were all concerned about during the time when that was being concerned about. Yes. Now, after that, nothing happened. Now, last I checked, he was in China. I forget it. I'm not sure where he's now, but ultimately out there still doing the same stuff. To me, that felt coordinated. Virus-sized transistors. Same point, guys. Talking about creating things that are nanoscale biological devices that are the size of viruses that can be used to manipulate any number of things. And that's what this ultimately talks about. Here's what they changed the title to. Charles Lieber's nanoscale transistor can enter cells without harming them. So it's really the precursor of what we just talked about, the precursor of the COVID-19 shot, all the different technology. And then, of course, you can overlap that with Bob Langer, that Whitney called the coronavirus common denominator. And he's directly tied to Charles Lieber. And he was the co-founder of the Moderna shot, the scientific co-founder. All right, so my point is these guys are working in all this technology that literally converged on that major psychological operation the whole world seems to call out. Now, coming back around, it seems that they're at least referencing the story that seems to be disregarded as some kind of fake idea. And whether that's just a passing coincidence or not, it's definitely worth understanding where I believe this technology is going. And it concerns me. And at the same time, you have this administration who is telling you that they care about these things, who are still pushing COVID shots. And of course, as Tom Renz points out, can anyone explain how this clown is being nominated for Surgeon General? This statement should disqualify her from practicing medicine. Yet Trump nominates her. Here's what she said. I'm fully vaccinated, had a recent COVID breakthrough infection, and received monoclonal antibodies. I also have autoimmune pericarditis and flared after the vaccine and got the infection. I haven't had chest pains in about 2 weeks. Finally, should I get the booster? Wow. Yeah, go ahead and get the booster that will add to your heart problems that were caused by the first booster. It's just insane to me that these are, not Maha. I agree. But Mary Talley Bowden responded saying, Trump won't give us one of our own. That is clear. Based on a private message that she sent me months ago, I'm going to give her a chance, but I won't stay silent if I disagree with her in the future, which she has demonstrated routinely, that Mary cares and will call out people that don't do what she thinks they should do. Now, what I'm highlighting here is because, of course, if you want, everybody should be able to give somebody an opportunity to see if they're going to do what they claim. And first, making sure you're skeptical. I appreciate what Mary does. My point, though, is that I think it's interesting that somebody like this reaches out to somebody like Mary to try to get her not to be critical. I argue I know where this goes. She will do everything we already know she'll do because Trump's already doing it, and she clearly already supports the idea, and then Mary will call her out. But the point was to try to get people like Mary that she knows are influential in the community they pretend they represent to be on her side. Why? Because they know they're going to lie to you. That's how I view that. And of course, the reality is that they know Mary is influential because she calls out the things that we know are bad, which means that they know they're bad. It's pretty easy to understand. And Renz is calling it out too. Of course, Rand Paul comes out and says yesterday's hearing, the 13th hearing that came 2 days after Fauci's statute of limitations ran out, made one thing clear. Washington knew more about COVID origins than they ever admitted. I'm sure glad we're still focusing on the idea of the origin point, even though that's not, think about where we are right now. Of course, with the lies, I believe they're spinning about the origin point. We're just ignoring the fact that these shots were clearly designed to hurt people, were clearly manipulated in different locations. And I mean, from truncated spike proteins to self-amplifying shots. I mean, guys, this is an insane story. And Rand Paul wants to pivot you back to talking about something that was, so manipulated that they censored everybody for even bringing this up, then eventually came around to say, yes, that was the case. And it's just ridiculous to me. On top of the fact that what are we going to do now? So now he says, I've been demanding answers for years. The cover-up is unraveling. Fauci has cronies are nowhere left to hide, except that they're not going to be legally held accountable. Last I checked, no, there's Morenz. I doubt any of this goes anywhere. I hope it does. Why wouldn't you have done this when you had an opportunity to all this bombshell information actually put the man in jail? I want to believe that he's doing the right thing. I want to believe he cares. I want to believe that about everybody. Just don't think that's where this is right now. And it's sad that this is what we get. Now, on another interesting story that we just covered, this is something that I think is going to be it's going to grow in importance, I argue. Now, we've been talking about this a long time. As you guys already know, I'm not going to go through it yet again. The idea of Prospera, of the network state agenda. We recently covered this on the 13th. Honduras Gate and the technocratic takeover of South America. I'll include yet again the actual site. What's it called here? It's excuse me. All of a sudden I have to cough. Reactionary.international. Now, this is about a larger kind of, they call it the term they use is reactionary international, but it's about sort of a technocratic element that is overtaking parts of the world. And this is about specifically South America. Now, this is wild to me. I went through this myself. And the whole point this comes from I think it was a Spanish television outlet that worked with this group. You can go through all this, like anything that I will bring to you, that you can check this stuff for yourself and all the audio recordings, the whole thing. Now, of course, translation. The point is that you can go through this and see that they did their due diligence. Now, of course, you should question everything. The reality of this, I think, was clear before. They even get specifically into the idea of ZD and Prospera. They just don't use the word Prospera. They talk about the ZD they created through corruption, through the manipulation of the Supreme Court. And that Trump was directly involved in the pardoning of Juan Orlando Hernandez, who they argue will be right back in power with the next election, which I agree with, which was, I think, the plan. And that Israel was directly involved. In fact, they argue, controlling the operation. And that in their audio recordings, they admitted all of it. That this wasn't, that they didn't plan for this to come out. It's them discussing what they're going to do. And this is not just about controlling the country. It's about using this as sort of a jumping spot to go after all of these other countries. We see them doing this all around the world. I believe it's not just about this either. I think it's about, whether they're tangential agendas or one and the same, about the idea of this technocratic revolution that's taking place. And this just blew this open. And still gets basically no attention. When I did this on the 13th, I don't know anybody else talking about this story. Now, I'm glad to see that Gray Zone on the 14th came out and did their coverage of this story. So let's play this clip, and you can see what they had to say about it. Honduras Gate, the mega scandal U.S. media won't cover. Or apparently anybody else at the moment. Because last I checked, that came out about, about almost over a week ago. And I'm surprised that so few people are talking about it.
About it. History didn't begin.
Oh, that's not the one. We'll come back to that in a second. Mixed comments about what he had to say about Iran, but I guess I did a bad job getting these videos today. I'm so bad when I do that. Those that watch this show all the time, I want you to laugh at me because this happens so often. I don't know how I forget these, but what I'm grabbing is that video so we can check it out. And as I'm grabbing it, the obvious point, don't freeze on me. Uh-oh. Okay, good. Whew. My whole thing just froze for a second there. We're back. Got it. I was worried there. That's happened in the past where the whole thing just freezes and shuts down. Okay, here's the video. Now, the whole point, again, is that this is, before this even came out, something that is on the surface, just not really talked about. So what this adds to it is the recordings and the verification through AI and other voice, what they use modulate, like basically confirming through voice confirmation that these are real conversations, and we should be skeptical of that. But my point is that it just confirms all the other stuff we've been talking about. There it is. And so this again is from the Gray Zone. And this is their report on this Honduras Gate story.
Audio leaks have exposed U.S. meddling in Latin America, primarily through the former Honduran president and convicted drug trafficker, Juan Orlando Hernandez, who was brazenly pardoned by Donald Trump. The leaks help us understand why Trump freed Hernandez, as he was the linchpin for a covert media operation designed to smear left-wing governments in Colombia, Brazil, and Mexico.
Digital journalism. Someone else will be managing it for me. Someone from the U.S. president's team.
But there was another hand pulling the strings of the continent's political structures, as Hernandez warned the current Honduran president. It was Israel.
The Prime Minister of Israel is going to lend us his support. We are deeply grateful to him. They played a major role. In fact, they had everything to do with my release and the negotiations. The money for the pardon, it didn't even come from you people. It came from a council of rabbis and from a group of people who have supported Israel.
Hernandez laid out plans for social domination through violence and brute repression. The opposition had to be crushed by any means necessary, while Trump was to be blindly obeyed.
Honduras needs force. It needs logistics. It needs blood. If you want to keep the people under control, you have to oppress them, squeeze them, and counter violence by generating violence. Whatever President Trump says goes.
Hernandez proceeded to pass on what seemed like some very privileged information, clearly stating that, somehow, Trump would remain in power for the foreseeable future.
Take it as a given that he's going to be there for all eternity. How? I don't know, but just assume that's the case, and take my word for it.
General Romero Vázquez Velázquez, the former head of the Honduran army during its 2009 military coup that toppled Social Democratic President Manuel Zelaya.
And remember, for those that haven't heard the larger, where I get into this and the Prospera story, is that's an important part of this. I go over this in that Honduras Gate episode, the 2009 illegal coup of the U.S. government, which is what allowed this all to happen. And it was directly connected. Juan Orlando Hernandez, the whole thing. And the idea that they've manipulated the Supreme Court to get the ruling they wanted on the ZD that they otherwise wouldn't have been allowed to get. I mean, it's all very, very coordinated. And so again, like I said the other day, for the people that want to argue that this is the libertarian future that we're wanting, I would argue there are people that exist in these locations that probably are doing what they think is the right thing or might believe that's what the bigger thing is about. But at the top, it's not. And the idea that any kind of libertarian difference will, whatever the worldview you have about libertarianism particularly, can be started with U.S. state-backed violence. An illegal regime change at the barrel of a state violence, guys. There's no way you can argue that then leads to what you claim. Because at the end of the day, clearly the people at the top do not believe in what you claim you believe. But overall, what we're talking about is something that is, the main point. The ends do not justify the means. I don't know how anybody who argues what we're talking about what it shows you is that there's a compromising of principles, that you argue, well, that undermines the entire premise of what this is about, if it is about libertarian values, but we'll ignore all that because we get what we want now. That's ultimately what it comes down to. And then assuming it stays that way with a group that doesn't care about your principles. It's just very clear to me that this is not the right path. I hope I'm wrong, but I just think it's obvious. And so then we have Trump pardoning Juan Hernandez after being charged and found guilty and went to jail for drug trafficking. Think about the absurdity of doing that with what he claims he's fighting in the world. And this is not some political thing he claimed. This guy was found guilty. He is a criminal. And now Trump put him back in power. Yeah, nothing. That's nothing new there. He's doing this all over the place. And I argue most conservatives, honest people who aren't blinded by team sport politics are already calling this out, or at least are aware of the larger corruption we're seeing in this administration.
Who was later accused by prosecutors of taking $1 million from narco traffickers.
How? I don't know, but just assume that's the case, and take my word for it.
General Romero Vázquez Velázquez, the former head of the Honduran army during its 2009 military coup that toppled Social Democratic President Manuel Zelaya, who was later accused by prosecutors of taking $1 million from narco-traffickers, offered Juan Orlando Hernandez a grim assurance: the death squads stand at the ready.
I've got at least one group already lined up within the Army. They're ready. Everything is aligned to start the hunt. I also have a list of people who need to be dealt with, given the works, scrubbed out, made to disappear one way or another.
Finally, quoting none other than history's most notorious drug lord, Juan Orlando Hernandez, encouraged Honduran Congressional President Thomas Zambrano to embrace the dark deeds to come.
And don't be so soft. Don't let your heart get in the way. Don't go soft, otherwise the job can't be done. That's what Pablo Escobar said.
So it's pretty clear, I think. I mean, based on what we were discussing before, question all of it. But like I said, the recordings were in foreign language. Do your due diligence. I think it's pretty clear that these things represent what is actually happening. I just think it's important this gets talked about because it's on one level about just blatant corruption, which contradicts everything Trump says he stands for. And then on the other hand, you have this being done for an obvious technocratic sort of revolution within these countries. That's happening in a lot of places around the world. Gaza being one of them, Argentina being one of them, El Salvador being another. I mean, this is not a secret, guys. It's happening right in front of us. And now we have even more evidence showing you that they've coordinated all of this. And it's very important that we see, I argue, where this actually goes. And Max simply says, Trump pardon, I believe he probably just said most of this. Israel is the operating as the middleman. Well, the Honduras Gate article seems to suggest Israel's more in charge, to be quite honest. So you could take that for what you will. Now, I'll include the previous shows on this about the technocratic regime change under the guise of freedom. Technocrats are slowly taking control. That was 2024, as well as the network state conversation, the transition to tech Zionism, which is what Balaji Srinivasan says about the network state agenda. That's what they call it. He's the former CTO of Coinbase, who's ultimately wrote the book about this. And, he's one of the pillars of this drive. Now, before we go on to the next segment, though, I just really think it's important to, one, consider what that all relates to. And it's not just Trump's administration, but also, again, to demonstrate the value of this platform. I mean, that's not our breaking. That's from the platform that put it out there, Revolutionary International. It's good for them. They get the credit. But I want you to recognize that this platform brings you information that is before most people. And I think that's worthy of that's demonstrating our value for you. Because a lot of people, I've honestly never framed myself as, okay, what Gray Zone does. I mean, Wyatt Reed right now is in Iran, or at least he was recently, breaking down some very important stuff, like on the ground, real investigative journalism. Good for him. That's not something I'm even capable of at the moment because of resources, because of any number of things. But I don't see myself in the same vein. I see myself as sort of an aggregator of information, which is another vein of the journalistic endeavor. My point, though, is that it's about me trying to bring together the excellent work of people that are out there trying to get you to see it and package it in a way that makes it easily digestible, or at least gives you a medium that you can see it in other cases where it's completely suppressed. That's what I think I bring to the table. And so it's about getting the information and the access to the source material at a point when you're going to be obfuscated and lied to by damn near everybody else. So if you find value in that, let us know what it's worth to you, because we don't exist without your support. So let's get into the idea of what just happened in Gaza and the idea that this demonstrates the stressed ceasefire, as the BBC might call it. As I wrote, there's just no way to misunderstand this. There's supposed to be a ceasefire in Gaza. There's supposed to be a ceasefire in Lebanon. Allegedly, there's one around. None of those exist. The only world in which those exist is in the idea of Trump. Not even Israel. Israel just said publicly there's no ceasefire in Lebanon, but they're still pretending it when they talk to the media. In this case, they still the same thing about Gaza. Well, Israel came out today and said publicly, we've targeted Hamas's leader in Gaza City, despite ceasefire. It's the times of Israel. Okay, so there's really no way to misunderstand this. You can't go, but there's Hamas there. Okay, even if you think that justifies the attack, they claim there's a ceasefire. Even Israel does. So why would you then be allowed to attack them if they say that if you're claiming you're in a ceasefire? If you did, then that means you just violated the ceasefire. But no one seems to claim that, because no matter what Israel does, it's always just a stressed ceasefire that barely is holding on, right? But Hamas can yell mean words and apparently it violates the ceasefire. And I shouldn't even say that, because they're just as capable of doing something that violates it as anybody else. But that's what seems to continue to happen. So they just killed people in Gaza yet again. And that shouldn't surprise you because it has really never stopped. And here is Asal Rod saying Gaza looks like the apocalypse that you're still using. Gaza looks like the apocalypse, and you're still using targeting Hamas to justify it. I mean, just civilians screaming and running and hiding, trying to get away from the bomb buildings that were their homes. And CNN says Israel carries out strike targeting the most senior Hamas leader left in Gaza. Right, even CNN that's pretending out there to care about stopping this, or at least at the higher level they pretend. Some of them seem to maybe, but at the end of the day, that's how you frame that. Like, who cares? That framing should be Israel violates ceasefire. Israel publicly acknowledges they ignored the ceasefire. That should be the title. That'd be the title for the whole world if Hamas did the same thing. Why is it not? Well, you know why, guys. It's not a secret. And on top of that, Netanyahu just spoke at a public meeting and openly said, today we control 60% of Gaza, and tomorrow, well, we will see. And the crowd applauds. Well, in case you missed the point, 60% is not what they agreed to. So we will see tomorrow is not even the point. You know what he means by that. We're taking it all because that was what we told you. And we've been yelling that the entire time, but the stupid Americans who listen to CNN and Fox News just never hear that. I shouldn't even say it like that. But the point is, guys, realistically, he's been publicly telling you this his entire life. So is Smotrich and Ben-Gvir. They're doing conferences and dancing and yelling, we're taking over Lebanon and Gaza. And we still can't be honest about it. So he comes out and says 60%. In the alleged ceasefire, they were, what was it? I forget now. It was the yellow line. We told you that's really just a way for them to continue to encroach into Gaza by claiming they're securing something that they're not, because they're just killing anybody on either side of the line. And now he just made it public that 60% is what they hold, which means he publicly acknowledged, even before the attack, that they're already violating the ceasefire. Nobody cares, apparently. And as Blakely says, people are out here pretending he's not saying this in public. Not people, the corporate media, the mainstream alternative media, and people in a position to actually do something. As Daniel McAdams highlights, this is what a Holocaust looks like. One of the most terrifying images in history. A transformation from life to death. Gaza 2023. That's what it looked like. Gaza 2026. That's the exact same street. Really absorb that for people that want to pretend like this was targeting Hamas. I mean, they're out there right now bulldozing anything that's still partially standing up. That's what they're doing. You're going to pretend like that's a tunnel they forgot? I mean, what are we even talking about? Nobody actually believes that. You just got to deal with these ridiculous bots and Zionists that act like nobody, everyone's on, you're racist if you say otherwise, and people get cowed by it. Only monsters can pretend like that's not obvious. And on that note, here's Elon Levy. He says, don't invade Israel to take hostages and sex slaves again. Well, again, that's pretty damn obvious. First of all, that didn't happen. You could prove that. Even the woman with the gray pants that they used as the billboards and everything is home, and she said she wasn't raped. And the reality is that it was her ankle that bled on her. You can make all the allegations you want about why. The bottom line is she was an IDF member. So you can lie about it all you want and make them out to be women that were stolen from their homes. They were members of the military that were taken in the midst of an illegal war. You illegally occupied the territory. That means they have the legal right to armed resistance. It's all on the record. And so you took them, even though you knew it was coming, you let them get taken, because that's a fact as well. Then you went on to kill most of the people that you claim Hamas killed. That's also a fact, called the Hannibal Directive. But my point is, the idea that they were taken as sex slaves is not true, since they all went home and said that didn't happen. So what are we talking about? Did he can just still come out and say that happened, even though we all know that? It's the equivalent of Biden and Trump going 40 beheaded babies. I mean, Trump said something like that. I mean, they keep alluding to that. Even Netanyahu, even Rubio, even Lindsey Graham, like a month ago. If you haven't recognized, that's been absurdly, comically debunked to the point to where they've admitted they lied about it to a degree, that they were emotional and may have been wrong. That's what he said. He lied. We know that's the case. It was organized this way. And so the point really is not that he lied about that, right? And on hostages, since there's only a few that we can all acknowledge were hostages, like the Bibas family that were killed by Israel's bombs. That's an provable fact at this point. Even the husband said the same thing, even though they all lie about that, like everything apparently for Zionists. The point is that, well, to be clear, though, those were hostages that were taken, and that's a crime. And Hamas, or rather, really, it's been shown to be the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which is admitted by everybody at this point, that took them and then handed them off to Hamas. But either way, the point is they should be held accountable for taking hostages, just like Israel should be for the thousands they have in their prisons. My point, though, is that if you're going to say don't invade Israel and do this, even if you think they did that or this will happen, all the Levy is doing is saying it's okay we committed genocide because you did that bad thing. Do you agree with that? So if Hamas breaks the law, it's okay that we kill every Palestinian we can find? Because that's what he's doing right there. You see, they don't even try to hide it because ultimately they're trying to normalize the idea that, we're only fighting Hamas, but we all know that Palestinians are all evil and monsters. But it's only about Hamas, but let's kill all of them if we can. Like, it's not even a secret, guys. Like, anybody actually pretending these people aren't just genocidal, actively trying to kill, whether you think they all think they're all terrorists or not. The fact that they try to hide from you and tell you it's only about Hamas shows you that they know what they're doing is wrong, at least in your eyes. And then go, well, don't do it again then. F around and find out. Well, you guys are admitting that you're genocidal. That's all it comes down to. If they took every single one from Israel for sex slaves, it still wouldn't be justifiable to murder every Palestinian. I don't know why that's difficult for some people to understand. Omar points out another location. Not a single stone remains standing, nor a tree, nor a human being. Israel's completely annihilated his hometown of Bet Hanun. Yeah, this is what the Amalek references. Not a stone upon a stone. The idea that this is about absolute decimation of this population. They told you they were going to do. They publicly laughed about it. They made TikTok videos about it. But I guess we just pretend like that's not true as we watch the outcome we look at the outcome. Oh, and then just, meanwhile, Israel's chant, death to Arabs and may your villages burn at the Jerusalem Day March on May 14, 2026. But you're racist if you think they think that. You're just crazy that they want to kill everybody and burn all the villages down because that's racist. But again, they come out and chant, burn all the villages down and death to all the Arabs. And I guess that's just I don't even know how to make fun of. This is what so many people in this country think. Simply the fact. Make of that what you will. Not every Israeli or every Jew in Israel believes this. In fact, I argue it's a growing understanding that they're lied to by Zionism about what Judaism is, or that they just don't agree with murdering anybody they disagree with. But they've effectively, just like the U.S. government has, and it's also dissipating, but influenced Americans to support war. They all support these genocidal agendas, or at least the majority, it seems. But let's be clear, if they're going to say death to Arabs and may your villages burn, then it's clear they support war crimes. So let's not sit back and go, well, they're not as pinpoint targeting of Hamas. They're all asking for it, guys. That's what we're staring at. State of Palestine, 78 years of ongoing Nakba. That's today. The commemoration of the Nakba, which was the beginning of the destabilization of all things Palestine. The stealing of their territory, handed to them by Britain, the Rockefellers, rather a Rockefeller, and the ongoing genocide that's taken place since. That's what we're talking about. 78 years of erasure. Against all odds, we remain on our land and the land of our ancestors, says the state of Palestine. Return is our right. Freedom is our destiny. On May 15th, join the Palestinian people in commemorating the Nakba. Just sad. I mean, and on top of that, realize that the whole right of return, that's why the UNRWA was created. Literally created to monitor, because they were allegedly like Israel even argued that once the war's over, they can go back to their homes. Gee, we've heard that before, haven't we? That's what they said about these Palestinians. Well, they did the same thing then. And then what happened was they just never happened. And that's why the people have these old keys to the homes that Israelis from New York currently live in. The guy famously says, if I didn't take it, somebody else will. And we're pretending like we all don't know what's happening. And of course, the point was UNRWA was targeted. UNRWA was, they are Hamas. Well, no, they are the group that has the records that show that we're a bunch of genocidal monsters. So they killed them all. And of course, on the record, you can see on the ground that they were forcing Palestinians to give biometrics and to state publicly on video that they give up the rights to their home. I covered that story. You know who didn't? Basically everybody. No big deal, though. I shouldn't even say that. It's just obviously I'm frustrated that we get so little momentum on a story that the whole world can see. That makes me feel inept in some ways, right? Like we're not doing what we should be doing, but we are. It just shows you that the stuff, we should always be doing more. But the point is that the government or the power structures, they don't care what we think. If we've taken anything from what's happened over the last 5 years, we need to see that the government could not care less about what we think. 70 Palestinian children killed in the occupied West Bank since 2025. Most shot dead by live ammunition from Israeli forces. This is a Cradle report, but here's even the Reuters platform making sure, well, UNICEF says that 70 children killed in the West Bank and East Jerusalem since 2025. Of course, as Saul Rod points out, the meme, who's the killer? Media runs away. Who killed them? Reuters? They just randomly died? Yeah, obviously it's Israel. That's what we're talking about. It's not even a secret. And worse than that, here, well, there's a bunch of stuff I'll show you here. This is a video showing an Israeli settler. I don't want to play it for you. If you want to watch it, it's in here because this stuff just makes me sick. A video showing an Israeli settler killing a dog in the Palestinian village of the West Bank, beating the dog to death with sticks. What's absolutely horrific about this is it happens all the time. They're monsters, guys. I mean, I don't know why we can't see this at this point for those that still want to look the other way. This is what we're talking about. That's why the West Bank settlers have been saying, or they just tried to sanction them, and Israel denied it. The whole world knows what we're talking about. But I guess the whole world powers don't care. I saw Rod, the headline should be in every Western outlet. Israel kills, injures an average of 4 children every single day amid the Lebanon ceasefire. This has been shared by Save the Children. But I guess they're Hamas too, because why not? Mohammed Safa, child deaths in wars. Ukraine, 791 plus in 4 years. Palestine, 21,000 in 2.7 years. And that's what we can prove anyway. Lebanon, 200 plus in 74 days. Does the world condemn the killing of children, or is it complicated when the Middle East children are being killed? He also points out, not the first time, not the second time, not the third time or the fourth time, that Israel is constantly bombing Lebanon with banned white phosphorus munitions, violating a Security Council resolution, a ceasefire agreement, and international law with absolutely no consequences. I mean, oh, yes, it's for signaling. Okay, then why are they bombing during a ceasefire? Good luck with that. It's not for signaling, by the way. They're using it to punish people and destroy land for crops. It's unbelievably consistent. And for those that always want to pretend like it's somehow a conspiracy theory, you can check out Human Rights Watch. You can check out Amnesty International. You can check out B'Tselem. You can check out everywhere in the world has been documented this over the years. Israel, white phosphorus used in Gaza and Lebanon. They're war crimes used in areas that gave risk to civilians, which makes it a crime no matter what you claim you're using it for. Nobody did anything about it. See, sometimes I just get frustrated even covering because it's, this story should have been over. This story should have been over. I mean, this story should be over because it's obvious from 1,000 different directions what the Israeli government is. The fact that we even have to pretend like we're being, that we have to try to act like it's not the most obvious thing in the world, that what they're doing is murdering people for their agenda and starving and raping and killing and doing everything they can to get what they want and then acting like it's totally okay because they're bad guys. And even if they were bad guys, what they did was still a crime. And we still can't be honest about that. It's clear, guys, that there's either control over these foreign governments or they're a part of what they're doing or both. It's disgusting. Hala Yaber points out apocalyptic scenes from Tyre this afternoon. This is from today. Terrified children emerging through smoke and rubble after another vicious wave of Israeli strikes hit residential neighborhoods. Homes shattered, streets buried in debris, families running through clouds of dust, carrying children in their arms. The areas struck are well-known civilian residential districts. Of course, it's all cynically packaged by the corporate media and mainstream alternative as Hezbollah infrastructure. And this is what's so sickening about this, is the Israeli government is choosing to target civilians and then just goes Hezbollah stuff. And everyone in a position of power just repeats that. And they know what they're doing. They know what Israel is. And think about that. It's so different than Trump allowing shots to be given to children. Guys, they are not who you think they are. That's what's so alarming about this. So let's get into Iran. And I think I'm probably going to wrap after the Iran part. I was going to get into the Iran and China. I was going to get into some censorship stuff, and I think I'll fold that into the next one just because I think it's more relevant there. But I'll get into some of the points. But the idea, in case you missed it, Trump's complaints about Iran war leaks prompted aggressive DOJ investigations. Wall Street Journal received subpoenas for their reporters. I will go through this, but the point is that we're talking about reporters. So you're not going after the person who leaked the information, or they claim they are. So the fact that the person who leaked it was that would be a crime if you're calling it a crime. The reporter who reported what they gave them is not committing a crime. only because they go national security and therefore that information's off limit. That's not how this works. But that's how plenty of blind partisans, they're the same people out there going, Article 2, he could do whatever he wants. Okay, then can Biden do that? Can the next Democrat do that? No, then you're an idiot. So the end of the day point is that it's obvious here that they are breaking the law, that they're going well and beyond and both left and right are creating law, like their own laws that aren't legal and aren't constitutional, that say that you can't say the things that expose our crimes, like Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. And then and guess what? When this fully changed? With Bondi. That's right. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi, when she was here, just to show it to you so you know that's who it's referring to right now and not the current one. On April 25th, 2025, Pam Bondi issued a memorandum outlining when the Department of Justice can obtain information from news media, like dramatically changing the reality of this from a Biden standing that was basically not do that, at least as it was on paper. Worth knowing that. And they are doing this because people are calling out and exposing what they're lying about, guys. That's the press freedom, free speech president. Good God, guys. This is my point. Conservatives are not stupid. They see it. And unless they just don't care about free speech, the Constitution, or everything else you promised them, then they're not happy right now. You all know this, guys. It's not hard to recognize. And of course, it could be wrong. Maybe everyone out there only cares about supporting a team. I think that's pretty obvious not the case. I think it's obvious it's not even close to the majority. But that's my opinion. So we'll start with this clip on Iran. Senator Tim Kaine details the history of U.S. actions in Iran. Now, I like some of what he says, but here's my take on this before we even play it. This is Tim Kaine. It could be that he believes everything he's saying. That's not the point. I believe what we're dealing with here is an effort to say, now that everyone's seeing all of this, and that now because of what's happening, it's kind of dug up all the stuff. In fact, there might be an article coming out from, I don't want, in case you ends up just changing your mind, an article coming soon about the kind of going deeply through Operation Ajax. But my point, though, is that that's what he gets into. The idea that the U.S. government illegally did this, that the Shah was a monster, that Savak killed a lot of Iranians, and we know all this, but the government lies about it every single day, left and right, by the way, but he calls it out. But then, of course, he goes on to say, but we know today, Iran monster, Iran bad guy, and everything they did is true, and everything they say is true, and we can't let them do that. I don't believe any of that, or at least the way that they frame it. I think Iran's government is dangerous like any government is. But if you're going to pretend like they've done all these terrorist attacks today that you claim, or they support ISIS, or that they're arming evil proxies, they're killing, that's not true. It's just not the reality. Are they capable of murdering innocent people? Yes. Are they willing to break the law for their agenda? Yes. Are they willing to lie about the world stage? Yes. Are they right now? Not that I can see. Of course they could. I keep seeing Trump fumble over his own lies and Iran just easily playing into that. But that doesn't mean good guy, bad guy. So my point is what he's doing feels like an effort to start, basically go, like I keep saying, the war are good, but the way Trump's doing it is bad. And see all the bad history that we can now show you because we want to use that to get you in a new position. We'll finally admit that we were they were breaking all those rules. But today, Iran's bad. So we just kept to do it the right way. That's what it comes down to. And it is manipulation, in my opinion. But let's hear the first parts of this. We'll hear the whole thing, but the first parts are what I think are important to hear. And I want you to think about why it would be relayed now, because they know we all know it. The cat's out of the bag.
Talk about it. History didn't begin in 1979. Iran and the United States were allies in World War II. One of the pivotal events in World War II was the Tehran Conference, where President Roosevelt, Winston Churchill, Joseph Stalin met in Tehran to guarantee Iran independence, stable borders, and sovereignty. Iran loved the United States. The United States led a coup to topple the democratically elected government of Iran in 1953 during the Eisenhower administration. The United States propped up a dictatorship, the Shah of Iran, trained the secret police, the Savak, that tortured, exiled, imprisoned, killed Iranians by the thousands. And 26 years after that, there was a revolution, 1979, and yes, then it was death to America. The U.S. funding a dictatorship and toppling a democratic elected government led to an Iran that has been very hostile, and all the events my colleagues have talked about since then are accurate.
Well, they're not, though. Simply, undeniably not true. But the, first of all, death to America point could have very well at that point meant, maybe still does today, everybody in America. But of course, today it's been, I can show you the clip of the deceased Khamenei more than once making it clear to an academic sense. Look, we're not talking about the American people. This means clearly the empire and the institutional problem. That's what I believe it's always meant to a degree. But you can decide for yourself. My point, though, is that first of all, he's highlighting that this is why that came to pass, because of what and that has to be acknowledged. But they know we know that at this point, by and large. So now it's being used to say, see, Trump's wrong. So it's a momentary, that's why, and we're wrong to do it. But today, bad still. So kind of not wrong, though. But what he's doing is illegal. So in its essence, if we were in power, we would still be at war with the wrong. We would just do it the right way. That's so dumb to me. It's ultimately about trying to use his loss to benefit you politically in the moment while giving you partial truth. That's how I would read that. But so overall, before I finish this, we're talking about the next part. Now everything they said is true. What he's talking about are all the lies of nuclear weapons, all the lies of the state sponsor of terrorism. Now, whether you think they're bad people or not, those aren't true statements, and based on my research and what we can prove today. So you should keep that in mind with what he continues to say.
But just as Iran seized our embassy in violation of international law, then the United States funded Saddam Hussein for Iraq to wage war against Iran in the 1980s, killing hundreds of thousands of Iranians.
Yeah, well, even the embassy was in response, right? But either way, the point is that the point to take here is that the U.S. government has been continually, endlessly destabilizing, undermining, attempting to regime change again Iran, creating fake protests, killing innocent people, Israel assassinating their scientists, all of which is a crime, guys. There is no world in which that's allowed. Or legal, rather. Allowed's a different point, right? But legal. And it's like, so it's frustrating that, I guess in a world this guy might be trying to tell you the truth, it's just still not the full picture. So that's why I don't trust it or any of them.
And just as Iran funded proxies that bombed a Marine barracks on our embassy in Beirut.
Again, the point is always we're talking about groups that they work with. You could make the argument that they literally were part of that. Maybe you're right. My point overall is that we're talking about the idea of groups that they work with that are also groups that are obviously funding, or rather fighting, like a popular revolution against an occupying force. Again, that doesn't mean good guy, bad guy, but it just means, like with Hamas and Israel, that whatever you think Hamas was, it doesn't change the fact that they had a legal and documented right to rise up with an armed resistance against the occupier, no matter what was started first, or what happened first, or what they did that day. It doesn't change the legality. And so in this case, these people, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, the Ansarullah movement, these are groups that are rising up in response to the illegal occupations, the Saudi Arabian Hadi regime that was occupying Yemen, right? I mean, you go down each one. The Lebanese government is now calling, I don't want to go on too much on a tangent. Hezbollah and the rest of them are groups that are ultimately fighting against what I think is part of this larger problem. And you could argue they did things that were illegal when doing so. Still doesn't change the fact that they have a legal right to respond to these things. So when he says they armed these groups and did so, or they're proxies, no, I don't think they're proxies. I think that they're people that they're working with in order to fight what they think is fighting them. And look around the world and look at what they're doing. He just armed the Kurds and armed random people in Iran. They're still working with groups all around the world to destabilize groups they want to remove. Those are literal proxies. That's what they look like. So at least consider that if you think those are proxies in reverse, then if one's bad, they both should be. But it matters to me that we're talking about allies versus proxies, and there is a difference.
The USS Navy shot down an Iranian civilian aircraft in 1989, killing 290 civilians.
Very true. Of course, then what did he say? I refuse to apologize for America, famously. They did that. We all know it. And they today kind of pretend to deny it.
And the U.S. invaded Iran's next-door neighbors to topple their government. And then, yes, Iranians attacked U.S. troops arrayed near their border, and we've attacked and...
Okay, that's Iraq, guys. And so when you illegally invade Iraq based on lies and Iran sides with their neighbor and tries to stop you from doing it, that's not called terrorism. That's called the legal right to respond against an illegal invasion. You're not the hero for illegal invading. You're the terrorist. You're the monster. You're the illegal actor. You're the belligerent military, whatever you want to call it. And so to frame Soleimani, which is what we're talking about, and others for defending, like literally having the legal international right to stand there and defend against what you're doing and act like that's a counterbalance to they did this and we did that. No, they were right in what they did. They were legal in what they did. And of course, even talking about the roadside bombs and all this stuff, guys, you're talking about illegal adventurism everywhere you're going. And that's not to say that one thing makes one thing or the other okay. But you just have to understand that, like with this illegal war with Iran right now, none of this would be happening, arguably, based on all the evidence we have, if they hadn't started this illegal war. Based on even the fact that Iran tried to go back to exactly what they were doing before, And they bombed him and killed their religious leader. And then they went, okay, too bad. The strait's ours now. And clearly Trump is floundering in this whole thing.
Killed their leadership. I'm not saying that Iran is good. Iran is horrible. Horrible to its neighbors, horrible to people outside its borders, and even...
I mean, is that what you think? Are they horrible? I mean, I think governments are bad. I always will stand by that. But the idea that they're horrible, bad, it just feels like the argument that you have to go, well, they're super bad, but over here he's doing the wrong thing. It's like with the Hamas situation again. But do you condemn Hamas? It's like, okay, what do you mean they're bad? What are they doing? How are they bad to their neighbors? Why? Because they bombed everyone that bombed them with the U.S. and Israel? Before that, what are we talking about? See, my point is that that's not the reality of what he's framing when he says that. If you want to say they're bad and evil and do things, then make an argument for what you're claiming they're doing. Not that they legally responded to your belligerence, which is what happened. Even Trump says, look at what they did to everybody. We told you they were evil. Well, remember they went to the UN before the 28th and they said, hey, U.S. is going to do this. We will respond to all of them if they do. And then you did that. And then they did what they said. Sure, very terroristic of them to let the UN know that they had a legal right to do what they were about to do. Crazy madness. That's what he's pointing to.
Worse to its own people.
And of course, it could be, well, he doesn't even know that. I argue half these people are actually so far out of the know, like the way that Trump might be handled himself. I argue half these people, if not all of them, are truly not even in control.
But if you ignore the history of the back and forth between the U.S. and Iran, you will not get this right.
That's true.
If more war between the U.S. and Iran were the answer, we would have found the answer sometime between 1953 and now.
Either way, feels like a manipulative thing to do, but I'm certainly still glad that these things are being pointed to. Now, here is the guy allegedly responsible for like investigating and making sure there's no civilian casualties. So he's failing. So Gillibrand here, another politician who I don't support any politicians, says, if Iranians were warned, how did we bomb 22 schools? Now, the way he talks about this is insulting, that he cares and takes a personal passion about it. My opinion of the person, just by the way he presents himself, is that he's passive, that he's somebody who is being, that he's standing here either not aware that they're killing children all over the world, or that he's lying about that because he is being told to by Trump or whatever else we're talking about. Because you have to understand, the idea that they're not killing civilians is about as insulting as you can get with this right now. I mean, especially since we're talking about the school that we all know that they bombed, that Hegseth pointed to, that Israel told us the U.S. bombed. You can't deny this. I mean, he gave you the map that showed you the school in the red of the bombing pattern. They did this, guys, and they denied it. And they, as he'll tell you, have yet to even investigate. This should unnerve you. And I just wanting to show you two things is that they're lying about it, but that it's possible that these, ask yourself whether this guy, the way he responds, maybe he doesn't know, which would be even more alarming. That speaks to, I guess, the idea of who's really in control.
The second concern I have, Admiral Cooper, is how we've prosecuted this war to date. We have data and information publicly available in publications like the New York Times that 22 schools have been hit, hospitals, dozens of hospitals have been hit. And don't forget, guys, this is not Gaza. That's an important thing to remember. There are lots of people with lots of phones and media outlets, and that's what the reality is. You can report this and you can confirm this. Now, the argument is, well, maybe somebody else did it. Okay, you can make that argument. But there is evidence that shows where this came from, especially the munitions on the ground. But the point is that it's not something that can be brushed aside as if this is not even happening, which is kind of what he goes with this. Have regulations. We have the law of war. We have human rights obligations. We have our own targeting requirements to avoid civilian harm and death. Have you been implementing all the laws that are required under current law to minimize civilian death?
Senator, we have executed every operation consistent with the law of armed conflict.
Nope.
The subject of civilian casualties is...
You mean aside from the illegal war you started? Yeah. Aside from that, which would then mean that every action underneath that umbrella would also be illegal. So you're lying. Sorry. Or the other illegal wars before that. But, same old thing. I mean, think about how dumb that is for him to say that it's all, this is an illegal war by every single metric you can possibly spin. Even the war powers argument is still up in the air. So that's just embarrassing.
A particular passion of mine.
That 22 schools we have required under civilian death.
Conflict executed every operation.
Hear it again.
In death.
Senator, we have executed every operation consistent with the law of armed conflict. The subject of civilian casualties is a particular passion of mine. We pay attention to it. We follow all the procedures and have gone above and beyond to, in my case, personally warn the Iranian people of several instances during conflict where they were being potentially used as human targets.
How did
Oh, right. Good for you. Warning them that they were being used as human targets. Right. As you killed them, as you bombed the schools and hospitals and the parks and the downtown Beirut and Tehran locations. Right. I mean, it's beyond the pale that these people can sit there with their 70,000 badges on them, acting like somehow this is just, we could just lie. I mean, the question is maybe he somehow doesn't even know that, which is weirdly enough something I consider today because of what's going on in the world. But overall, it doesn't matter. That we know they're doing it. We can prove it. And either lying or he's somehow not even in control, which is almost more alarming.
we then bomb 22 schools?
Right.
There's no indication that we
How did we then bomb 22 schools?
There's no indication that we have that has been corroborated.
How many
Zero.
schools have we bombed?
There is one active civilian casualty investigation from the 13,629 munitions.
So how do you explain the
Okay, so you're telling me that we're still investigating the bombing of that children's school? You know, the school that literally the whole world has investigated, that every platform has gone through, that people, like you have Wyatt Reed on the ground there talking about it. And yet our U.S. military is somehow in the ongoing part of the investigation. You know, it's one of those ongoing investigations that just drift in the background and just never happened again. Remember all the things that Matt Miller told us he was going to follow up on? Remember all the things that Blinken told us he was going to follow up on? Never happened, guys. They know that that's how they do this. Just pains me. Absolutely pains me. They killed 170 plus innocent children. And that's just a Tuesday for these people, guys. And they just don't care.
publicly available information that 22 schools have been hit and multiple hospitals?
There's no way that we can corroborate that. No indication of that whatsoever, Senator.
There's no way you can corroborate or no indication of it? Which one?
No indication.
Well, the indication is what's publicly.
What do you mean? He said it though. There's no way to corroborate that. Then why are you investigating it? You just if you just found out there's no way to corroborate it, then why would it be an ongoing investigation? These guys can't even breathe without lying.
Available. There is indication. Have you investigated those claims?
We have not.
Why?
Think about that. I mean, you got to hear that again. I mean, then how is it an ongoing investigation?
Or no indication of it? Which one?
No indication.
Well, the indication is what's publicly available. There is indication. Have you investigated those claims?
We have not.
Okay, so you're telling me there's an ongoing investigation. And what she's pointing to is like the major bombshell report that shows you that they've bombed this location and you haven't even looked into the report. So what are you researching? What Israel hands you? It's very frustrating.
Why have you not? If this is a passion of yours, if you believe that the civilian casualties are not consistent with the law of war and not consistent with human rights obligations that our military regularly follows with great pride and great diligence, why have you not investigated those allegations when they're publicly being made on the cover of the New York Times?
Yeah, good question.
I'll be happy to take a look at each instance.
I would like a report.
I'll get back to you, guys. He'll get back to us. Okay, wait a minute. So you have a congressional dynamic here where you're being brought to answer questions about this topic, or rather just, Iran war in particular. And so you come to the table. I mean, let me put it this way. If you were her, if you were in Congress and you knew this was going to happen, wouldn't you go, hey, I'm going to want to know about this. I want you to be prepared to answer questions about this topic. And if you don't, then we're going to call out the fact that you knew and you deliberately came unprepared. So, because what happens every single time is you do this little dumb dance where you go, the thing, and it's a good point half the time. And they go, well, I'll follow up. I don't know. I don't have it in front of me. And then they never talk about it again. And she doesn't follow up. Nobody makes a point about it. She got her little win on the Twitter, which is the case. Both sides do it. But nothing happens. So my point would be, this is about giving you this little show. Because at the end of the day, you could have set this up to where he knew what he needed to bring to the table. I just think that's so frustrating. But let's wait and see, I guess.
Do that.
I would like a report from you, from your team, about whether there have been attacks that have resulted in the destruction of schools and hospitals? And if so, why? And how then, last, have you managed the 90% cut to the personnel who are supposed to avoid civilian targets?
Which is another story, right? Like, I guess it's woke to care about killing civilians, apparently, in the mindsets of these ridiculous team sport partisans. So we just get rid of 90% of the people involved in doing that, and then you pretend that you can know you're not killing civilians. Same old thing.
Happy to provide any report, and I would invite you and every staff member here to come to Tampa to look at the process, to see exactly how it works.
Oh, yeah, cool. We'll come down for a vacation. You guys can have some drinks, and we'll talk about how the process works. Nothing. I mean, I'm sorry to be so pessimistic about it, guys. It just goes this way every time. I'll try to keep this off to the side. I'll try to follow up. There's just so much going on. Please, somebody keep track of it. Remind me if I forget. I'm willing to bet you that we can go for the next year, even, and you'll never hear a follow-up, or that she ever got a report or anything changed and she never even spoke about it again. I hope I'm wrong. But even if I am wrong, what is it going to look like? Are we really going to pretend like the military is going to go, oh yeah, you're right, we made a mistake, we killed all these kids and stuff, we're sorry? Not going to happen, guys. Even if he's honest and he went to do the investigation and found out that they did, you know what's going to happen? The executive branch is going to go, don't you dare talk about that. And he's going to have to obey. That's what's going to happen. It's already happening, guys. That's not pessimism. That's just understanding the way this all works and knowing that it's happened this way 1,000 times before. That's how this works, guys. The precedent is obvious. Now, I'll include the show we did on the 28th, the day that this started. U.S.-Israel illegally bombed Iran, killing over 100 children and schoolgirls. Now, here is a interesting clip. Now, we recently read the article, the Atlantic article. This Iraq war architect telling you that Trump has failed, which I think was self-evident before he made that statement, but it's good to see people that can now see it because this guy allowed them to acknowledge it. But what's interesting is that Trump is not arguing that. And so this is confounding for him in a bit. And so here's what he has to say about this.
Precisely because the leverage in the region and the influence in the region is going to shift away from the United States and Israel and toward Iran and its supporters.
Let me bring you back to where we are now with hoping, or President Trump saying there could be concessions from Iran or some ceasefire moving forward. President Trump likes to talk about who holds the cards in these negotiations, right? He's repeatedly mentions that the U.S. could resume some kind of bombing campaign. As you mentioned, that was very effective in the early days of the war. In your view, is that threat of a continued military campaign, is that enough to incentivize Iranians to make some kind of concessions?
Well, clearly the answer is no. I mean, the proposal that the Iranians just sent back, in response to the negotiations, I would say was a slap in Trump's face. I don't blame him for not wanting to take it. They're basically asking the United States to pay war reparations and lift sanctions and allow the Iran formally to control the strait.
Okay, see, this is the point, guys. There's only two ways to look at this. This super insider who's doing all the political connections and just like somehow doesn't know that that's what Iran's been saying for like a month and a half. Really? That we've been telling you that we can literally, well, here's what they're telling. Here's what Iran is like. Since that fake ceasefire, they said, this is our 10-point plan. That's the same thing to this point with other additions. You know that because you watch this show. So is he somehow unaware of that? That a month before that ridiculous back and forth we just saw, that was already what they were planning. So it wasn't some slap in the face. It was just the reiteration of what they're already saying we need and that Trump already basically agreed to and then lied about. Does he really not know that, or is he lying to you now? If he doesn't know that, then that's insanely embarrassing if these people are not even aware of the most basic information that most of the independent media is reporting, or he's somehow trying to report this in a way that, while it looks like he's critical of Trump, like the other guy that we've talked about, who said Israel made him do this, but then now basically supports the war on Iran, is that it just is sort of a counterbalance to make you think that there's multiple opinions when all of them essentially support the agenda, as always. Because in case you missed the point, what we're talking about is the same thing, the same plan for the same things. They control the strait, I'll toll the strait, pay them back for what they caused. And what was the other one he just said? Like, the basic same things they do. Oh, the sanctions being lifted. And they've maintained that for, a long time now. And Trump then said, we'll give them that. They went to go in Islamabad. Then they realized they were lying. They broke. Then they did it again. And they didn't even meet with them. That embarrassed Trump. And this last time, even that he's misrepresenting. They sent it back and said the same things. We want those same things and we won't budge. And Trump's, I won't even read it. No, I'm going to refuse your refusal of mine. Basically, they refused what Trump sent and said, we are still demanding the same 10 points. We are refusing what you sent. And he says, I refuse that. You can easily prove that for yourself. And so he comes on and says that slap in the face, and he's right to refuse it. He didn't refuse anything. He pretended to refuse a refusal to him, and it was already well aware what was going on.
So that is not the response that comes from a nation that's afraid of further attacks.
That's
I would
true.
say, if you just look at the situation objectively right now, the nation that is more afraid of starting the war up again is the United States, not Iran. And Trump has shown, despite all his big threats about destroying Iranian civilization, even when Iran violated the ceasefire by attacking American ships, Trump only responded by going after where the attack was coming from. He did not launch any larger attack on Iran. So,
which, even if that was true, does show you exactly what we're talking about. But as you know, since you watched this show, depending, each time we're talking about this, the last time was very obvious. I mean, look, you can't deny that Iran said the blockade is a violation. Well, gee, because an act of war, which is a blockade, is obviously a ceasefire violation. Well, it's not effective, but it's never really stopped. It's been there. And what did Iran say? Well, Lebanon is part of the agreement. They agreed. It was publicly accepted. Trump acknowledged that, and then Netanyahu nixed it, and he acted like it wasn't allowed. That's how silly and obvious and embarrassing this all is. And so my point would be that there was no ceasefire, guys. There was no ceasefire. Trump violated it by allowing those things to continue. And then those things happened afterward. Imagine, is he that out of touch, unaware, or is he playing a role, which is what I think.
it's not inconceivable that Trump could order military action again, but I don't think the Iranians believe, A, that he actually is going to, or B, that it would be effective if he does.
You said now the defeat for the U.S. is likely. America, as you know in history, does not say that it has lost wars. It hasn't said that in Vietnam.
Which speaks for itself. Aside from losing those wars, they just never admit that. Weird. That seems relevant as they're losing a war and not admitting it.
Vietnam or Afghanistan or anywhere else. What, in your view, is the best possible option for the United States right now?
Well, there is no good option. I don't, again, and I'm not advocating this, but I think the only military solution would have to be a land invasion that removes the Iranian regime from power. And since I don't think the United States is going to undertake that, I don't really know what the answer is. Sometimes there isn't an answer.
Yeah, the answer is to stop the illegal war and admit that you failed. Because otherwise, no matter how you end this, guys, you failed. At this point, it's clear. So you can either try to contort this into making it look like you somehow got what you wanted, which is what he's going to do, or you just give up and admit you failed, which would be honorable wouldn't even be the right word for this person, but it would be the right thing to just stand up and admit it. We just didn't go as we wanted to. I was tricked. I got played. Like that would probably gain him support. Like I said a second ago, to him to come out and just be honest about it would probably win him support, but I don't think he's capable of that. I think that's pretty clear as he attacks his own supporters for calling out things we all know is true.
There doesn't have to be a solution. In fact, one of the things that I'm suggesting in the article is Americans are not, in all these other defeats that you mentioned, the United States was actually able to, they didn't have that much impact on the global strategic situation. And in some cases, the United States was able to undo some of the damage. I'm just not seeing here how the damage can be undone absent the kind of war that I don't think we want to fight right now.
When you talk about the damage outside of the region for the United States and the place it holds in the world, what are you talking about there?
Well, first of all, this is all taking place in the context of the Trump administration destroying all our alliances around the world. We've effectively destroyed the NATO alliance. Trump has made it clear that he's not interested in supporting our European allies, and therefore our European allies are going in a different direction. I think that we're going to see the same thing in East Asia, if we're not already seeing it. The Japanese and the Koreans are paying an enormous price. They're almost entirely dependent on this energy supply, and they're going to have to start figuring out how to look out for themselves. So there is a big general global breakdown, but specifically in the case of the Gulf, the United States, used to be hegemonic in the Gulf, and a lot of nations depended on the United States being supreme in the region.
Right, because hegemony is something we praise, don't we? In this democracy. It's just so silly. Like, because that's the truth, guys. At the end of the day, he's very aware of the imperialist nature of this country. He supports that. He's an Iraq war architect. So it's just funny that as individuals in the ridiculous cartoon mainstream alternative media, that it's like freedom, liberty, and winning and whatever. And it's just like this game of children dancing around while the reality is quite opposite. Everyone in the world knows what this government is. Like, it's just, that's what I wish. That's what I'm pointing about, like the constitutional conversation. Can we just get to a point to where you're saying what you actually think instead of acting like you're fighting for free speech while you're censoring people? Because it's impossible to fight through that for people who believe you're doing that. Like, you just accepted that and don't want to look at the evidence. It's the COVID-19 thing. You're being killed. I don't want to see it. It's like, it's what we're dealing with, guys.
And capable of enforcing a general peace. The United States has now demonstrated not only that it cannot, but that it can't be really trusted to make sound strategic judgments. So I think even the countries of the Gulf, which have been dependent on the United States, are going to have to look elsewhere. And so the net...
The dependencies have been created, though, guys. That's the point. You're talking about governments that support Israel at the expense of their people. The peoples don't want it. It's the same thing they did in all these other countries. Some of them have just fought back, like Yemen, like Lebanon, like they rise up against the occupied government. But my point is, this is what they do with Sisi in Egypt, or all these different locations. The UAE, they literally regime change these locations, or at least force these people into being amenable to the Israeli-U.S. interest over their own people when these populations despise Israel for obvious reasons, not because we're talking about Jewish people. And so it's interesting to think about that you create this world where they depend on us for our hegemony, for our imperialist control, when you force that into being reality, and most of them hate you for it when you really come down to it. That's my view anyway. So the real question to add is, does he believe that worldview? Does he think that you're helping people? And is he that deluded by what do you think you're doing? Like this, that would be the whole, what's the word I'm looking for? Or, just it's like the same thing I see in the technocrats. Some of them genuinely believe that this structure will be best for everybody, even if that means you've got no freedom. Like, that's my question is, does he believe that is what the world should use and need, or is it just shameless grabbing for power? I don't know.
Is a real diminishing of American global influence and unmistakably the increase in influence of China, first and foremost, but also Russia. They are the biggest beneficiaries to some extent, other than Iran, of the war so far. And I say that...
Okay, so at that point, then that means you have to acknowledge that Trump is responsible for giving your adversaries more power, but also ask whether this is what we should even be thinking about. I know a lot of Americans have been convinced that's the only thing you should think about, left and right. But understand that the idea is not about looking for foreign engagement, but about security. That's what you guys claim you're fighting for. Everything should be applied for, not defense in the context of war, but actual defense. And then focus on the country, right? And of course, that means China could build and gather and control and take over whatever. I kind of doubt that's what we're talking about, at least right now. I argue whatever eventually that will end up being the same point. But the reality is you build inward. Right. This is something that Bruce Fine talks about a lot. The idea being that you have to expect that this will ultimately fail and be prepared for that, because we are not perfect and people will eventually collect towards power. And so we've just lost sight of that. And arguably, I argue that my point is that we should go away from government entirely. But I would argue, just like you can argue a move away from centralized government would be at least a somewhat positive step, even though I don't believe in any of the ways they're pointing to right now. You could argue that what the American experiment was at least potentially an honest step in the direction away from more top-down power. And that had we actually continued with the experiment, we could have eventually went towards some kind of truly anarchistic society, which doesn't mean chaos if you're paying attention. That's my opinion anyway. But so all that aside, the point is that these people ultimately want that kind of top-down control. And I can see that in everything being represented today, that ultimately we have to, because otherwise they will. That's every argument on the table right now. I'd like to see if we, I guess the worry is that if we don't do this and we're not the ones doing it, like Alice Karp is telling you, that then we have to worry about China doing it to us. Well, I don't believe that. And I mean, I guess the argument is always is like, I'd like to at least see if a world is possible without this kind of top-down control. It's like saying Kamala or Trump, right? You got their control or that control. You got to pick which one you hate the least. I do not believe that's the way the world operates. I believe that's the construct they forced upon us. Anyway, continuing. So here's Donald Trump simply saying, I had a total military victory. Had. I don't know why he would say had. But the fake news guys like you write incorrectly. You're a fake guy. We had a total military victory. I actually think it's treasonous what you write. Ooh, that's dangerous. We'll get to that in a second. But think about this. The idea that he's angry and stomping his feet because the media won't report the story he wants. I mean, it's just so shockingly inconsistent with what he claims to support. Anybody still believes he fights for those things is just a blind follower because it's obvious his actions do not support what he claims he supports. Same with Elon Musk and all the rest. But think about first that point, the media. But then the idea that as he's writing, so as Dan McAdams writes, so the CIA is fake news now? Because recognize that's where the information comes from. Ratcliffe, the one he appointed, who he probably hates now, and says, you better have a word with Ratcliffe. Senate defeats 7th attempt to limit Trump's Iran war powers. Now, 7 times we've seen this. I don't believe it was genuine. I think some of them might have wanted it to happen for their own political purposes, but I think all of them, if you listen to them, will tell you Iran needs to be stopped. So they're saying war good, but Trump's way of it bad. That's silly. And so what this is getting into is the fact that yet another, well, some of them, Rand Paul and some others, had tried to stop it, but there was one vote that actually allowed this to not be stopped. You know who that was? This man. This gremlin right here, this guy that is out there constantly acting like he's playing this weird, like I'm a Democrat, but I support the Republicans have it right. It's like, he's being used. He's not a bright person. You can see that by the way he operates, and it's not because of his injury. He's just not an intelligent person. And that's why he's been used, I argue. That's half this government right now. Brent Thacker says the Senate has just voted against advancing an Iran war powers resolution for the 7th time, 49-50. This time, though, Democrat was the deciding vote. Rand Paul, Susan Collins, and Lisa Murkowski voted to advance it. John Fetterman voted against it. So you have a split. And now, of course, this guy who represents, obviously, you can see the people pulling the strings, I argue. But clearly the point was that this is starting to shift because people see opportunism. I argue that people aren't happy about it. Whether your vote translates to their position or not, they still need you to support them for a lot of reasons. And I argue that this is about that. They all don't care, in my opinion. That's how I see it. But at the end of the day, people start to turn because, like a Marjorie Taylor Greene, because they see an opportunity. They recognize they're losing something. And so I think this is important to recognize that it's illegal from every possible way. There was no imminent threat. That's proven by their own statements. And now they've just paused and shifted into some new operation. There's not some secondary thing. There's nothing guiding this at this point. And the Congress can't even get together and acknowledge that. It's broken, guys. It's utterly broken. Of course, it's now, they argue, $29 billion up from 25. Just a small little $4 billion, $5 billion increase. No big deal, right? Or excuse me, $4 billion to 25. $4 billion, that's insane, guys. But $29 billion at all for a war they told you was not going to happen should make you insanely mad. But it's worse when you realize that the real cost appears to be closer to $72 billion. And if you can't wrap your mind around how this very dishonest administration could possibly be a little bit dishonest about the number, then you're not paying attention. And they don't want you to know about this. That's why they're yelling at the media for reporting the things that we can prove, because they're desperately in a tailspin. Even if it was just $29 billion, it's so much money that is taken from your pocket and given directly to, I actually argue most of this, the money that goes to Israel, the money that goes to Ukraine, the money that goes for, there's something else happening here. Whether it's you can decide what you think is happening, but on top of all of it, it's an illegal war. And during illegal wars or wars in general, money ends up flying out the door for 1,000 different reasons. During COVID-19, which was a war on you, same thing. Ben Swan adds to this in regard to the financial sense that you've already seen the clip, but I'll play it again really quickly in case you missed it. Trump doesn't care that you're suffering through this.
Are Americans' financial situations motivating you to make a deal?
Not even a little bit. The only thing that matters when I'm talking about Iran, they can't have a nuclear weapon. I don't think about Americans' financial situation. I don't think about anybody. I think about one thing. We cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon.
Yeah. And why do you think that's the point he focuses on at all, at the expense of everything else? Well, clearly, because that's what Israel wants. And as Ben Swan says, I bet he'd never have said, I don't think about Israel's best interest. That's a really good point, actually, when you think about it. Like, stand back. Do you see a world in which he would stand there and if they said point blank, do you think about Israel's interest when no, I don't think about anything. I don't care about Israel's interest when I'm talking about Iran. No, he wouldn't. And you know that. I mean, that's my opinion, right? But I mean, I think we can demonstrate his consistency of always being on that side. And so I think it's important to think about, one, that he doesn't care about how it's affecting you, even though he promised you that's what he cared about and that this wouldn't happen. And now that it happens, he goes, I don't care what you're suffering. Now that I did the thing I told you I wouldn't do. That's just a slap in the face, guys. He doesn't care about you. Neither is Biden, as any of them. And so the point, though, is that he's now saying, I'm going to keep doing this because of a nuclear weapon, even though that's not the reality. Even though Tulsi Gabbard told you that, even though the IAEA told you that, even though Witkoff even is the one that clumsily argued what we know they have is somehow a problem, even though the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, said on the record that that was actually within their safeguard, 60% enriched, about 1,000 pounds. All legal, all allowed to be had. It's a public statement. It wasn't even a crime. And they turned it into they're bragging about their weapons. I mean, that's how desperate they are or how stupid they are. They don't have that based on everything that we have going back a long way. And that's what he points to. The thing that's not true, it's okay that you suffer so I can pretend to be fighting that thing. That should make you even more upset. Of course, he tells you outright it's for Israel. Trump explains why the U.S. attacked Iran without provocation.
We don't need it at all.
We don't need it at all.
Fair enough. So,
I mean, you could make the case, like, why are we even, we're doing it to help Israel and to help Saudi Arabia and to help Qatar and UAE and, Kuwait and other countries, Bahrain.
Oh, yeah, keep going, Trump. Use your fingers and toes.
It also helps China.
And I told them today, I said, we're helping you. And we're helping you in another way because I don't think China wants Iran to have a nuclear weapon either.
Man.
I said, they're stone cold crazy.
I bet he's lying about whatever he's just about to say. Like, just based on his mannerisms and the way he always does this, I love just doing this for fun, honestly. But it's just, there's something about the way he conducts himself. This is not even newsworthy. It's just funny to me that it's like the way you see him go. He pauses and does that weird under chin thing he does. Just watch. There it is, right there. That whatever that is, whatever that's supposed to be.
I said, wants Iran to have a nuclear weapon either.
Right there.
I said,
think
they're stone cold crazy. You don't need them having a nuclear weapon either.
What did he say?
I would bet, seriously, if this was like a casino, which is what Trump's apparently trying to turn the country into, I would bet money that it didn't happen. How many times we get these statements he makes where he just embellishes the craziest things? I'm nothing going. It's not even important. You should forget that I said it. I just think that would be what I would bet that's completely made up. One more time.
Also helps China.
I told them today, I said, we're helping you. And we're helping you in another way because I don't think China wants Iran to have a nuclear weapon either. I said, they're stone cold crazy. You don't need them having a nuclear weapon either.
What did he say?
Well, he's not going to respond too much. He's a pretty cool guy. He's not going to say, oh, gee, that's a good point.
Over here, Trump will tell you that they're invading our country and occupying our voting machines and destabilizing and trying to infiltrate and cause this. And maybe they are. But he's a cool guy, though. He's nice. We're friends. And he's a good leader.
I think he might.
What's he going to do? What a wonderful point.
You think he agreed?
Yeah, I think
that was the impression.
I don't think he wants them to have. No, he would like to see it end. But he's been good about it,
He's been good about it. What are you talking about? See it end? The war that you've created? Yes, obviously. I mean, it's kind of sad is to watch the people like Hannity, these dying media give this these lazy softball engagements, just watch him engage. It's like he's speaking to a toddler. And it's just so embarrassing to watch them act like this is some high level talk. It just pains me. But that's what people like Hannity do. It's like all the rest of them. But as Patrick Henningsen says, there you go. Historical record. We did it for Israel. But we knew this already because it was already admitted more than once. If you need more, there it is. On top of that, U.S. intelligence shows Iran retains substantial missile capabilities. Now, of course, it could be wrong. We should question everything, like we questioned the report coming about the MK Ultra stuff. And we should. But what I find interesting is that this is coming from U.S. intelligence, and Trump says it's the opposite. So how is that happening, right? It's like we just talked about with all the rest of these stories, that there's a schism here. Now, it could mean that one's lying, one's telling the truth, and there's a divide in their own administration, which is probably more likely than not. But it also could represent something else. It could represent something outside influencing the conversation. and whatever reason, trying to spin this in a certain direction. But secret new assessments say Iran has operational access to 30 out of 33 missile sites. Oh, yeah, so they're completely broken down. They've got nothing left. No one's in charge. They're clearly not. But think about what Trump's been saying. Now, not even just this report, guys. Everything else we can see and prove, aside from this. He's been lying to you extensively. And so, again, the question is, does he know that? And how could he not know that at this point? I mean, I'll just jump ahead for a second. Trump says he won't be much more patient with Iran. That's yesterday. You better do the thing or we're going to do this thing. It's like every single day. You'd think there'd be some statute of limitations on how embarrassed you could. I mean, that's pretty sad. That's right now. He's doing that same thing. If they better, we're going to get a mean Trump and we're going to bomb them into the next whatever. That's pretty embarrassing. Even as you got the Atlantic guy, you got, everyone's out there going, yeah, this is pretty obvious. And he still does it. So is he in control? Is he even aware of what's going on? I mean, these are real questions that it seems extreme, but with where we are, it's hard to miss these. 30 out of 33 missile sites along the Strait of Hormuz, they're saying they have access to, suggesting that its military remains far stronger than President Trump has asserted, coming from U.S. intelligence. Here's I didn't include it. That's right. A little graph that was out there I had. But the point is that they have control of the majority of what they said was lost, or rather what Trump said was lost. Enter the holy crap red light guys. Excuse me. He says, holy crap, red light. Not a joke for the podcast. Eric Dowdy. President Trump announces he's been watching Iran try to rebuild and says he's wiped him out and he could in 24 hours. Wait a minute now. Okay, hold on. This is posted on the 14th. This is the same interview with Hannity. Okay. So he said 2 days ago, if not, I mean, frankly, I would be willing to bet you he said yesterday, but I know for a fact he said 2 days ago. They're annihilated. We hold all the cards. Their Navy is gone. They've got no missiles. I mean, in fact, he said that in this interview, by the way, that they've no missiles or interceptors or whatever. Something, I forget which one he referenced. And then when asked about this, the report showing you that they are rebuilding and they don't actually have annihilated basically anything, even Navy ships, he goes, oh, well, they're rebuilding and I'm watching and we could take it out tomorrow. I mean, if you were Hannity, you'd be like, Mr. Trump, you just said that they don't have anything, but now you're claiming that you watched them rebuild, that we could build. That's just a guy who's responding on his toe. Like he's on his back heel. He's on his feet. He's on his back feet, or rather, what's the phrase? He's on his heels. I think that's what it is. He clearly is reacting and not being proactive. So the point is, the report comes out showing you that they have far more than Trump has been claiming. And then this just gets stated as, well, there you go. And then Eric Howard, goes, we knew it. Trump is watching and he'll bomb them. But this guy was just going, we knew it. They have nothing 2 seconds ago. It's just always worth laughing at these ridiculous clowns. And again, the point is, these guys don't care. You can look at the comments. Everyone beneath them is going, you're an idiot. Oh, I forgot I actually commented. But they're all going, oh my God, a lot of them. That's not true. How embarrassing. Why do you always agree with him? Whatever. They don't care. They don't care that they're wrong. They don't care that you see that they're wrong. It's not even about that, in my opinion. For all we know, they're even bots. Frankly, it's irrelevant at this point. They are a joke in this community, but they have millions of followers. They influence the conversation. And the only time I ever reference them is to make sure you understand that these people are laughable, but also that you can see where the narrative is being pushed by the platform that is designed to manipulate you. But here's what Trump said about this idea.
They have no anti-aircraft. Now, they probably have. I mean, we know everything they've done. They built it up a little bit. We'll take it out in one day. It'll all be gone. I hope they're watching, because all of their anti-stuff, anything they put up, we know exactly what they put up. They had a little respite, and so they're trying to get a few things together. They have taken some missiles from underground.
Oh, wait, but didn't you just say they had none left? I mean, you told us they didn't have anybody in charge. They didn't even know what was going on, but now they have more missiles and they are in charge, but they're getting a little better. But don't worry, we can take them down. Because you just can't miss that he's lying to you. One way or the other. You could choose which one. He's lying to you. But again, it's wasting my breath because I'm pretty sure you all know that. But in case you don't, in case the one person is still somehow convinced that he's not, he's objectively lying to you.
We know exactly what they're doing. It'll all be gone in one day.
Oh, no. Well, then why wouldn't you do it now, Trump? I thought you won already. I thought they surrendered. I thought they're begging you for surrender. But now when we want to, it'll be gone in a day. Does anybody actually believe that? Because, it's militarily strategic, just, it's strategy, military strategy to just let them hold all the weaponry until we decide we want them to stop them. Maybe they'll bomb us a couple times. Maybe they'll take out a foreign country. Maybe they'll bomb our ships, but we'll do it tomorrow. because that's what intelligent people do. It's laughable, guys. It is laughable.
They've done for the last 4 weeks will be gone in one day. But when you read
4 weeks, he just said 4 weeks. Again, 2 days ago, you told us they had nothing.
Some of these horrible papers.
It's just so, it's hard to pretend to take these people seriously. Now, drop site news. This was from the 12th. Well-informed source on the progress of negotiations between Iran and the United States confirmed that the top-level directives issued to the Iranian government team included 5 conditions that must be met before entering into talks. Now, you watch this show, so you know this is what Iran's been asking for a while now, well before the alleged meeting before the last. So to act like this is somehow new and a shocking thing for Trump to refuse is means you're either listening to wrong people and you're not being informed. I guess that's the reality. The other one would be, at the end of the day, that it's out there, it's public, and you can see it. We've been talking about it. And the same thing I say about corporate media. You can argue Iran's dishonest or lying or whatever, but to not give you the argument, here's what Iran had to say about it, shows you this is all about propaganda. Right? Because if Iran's coming out at the same day and going, that's not true, we don't have a ceasefire, what's Trump even talking about? And all you get from left and right, even the adversarial media, is there's a ceasefire and it's all going well and blah, blah, blah. Or, it's just not true. They keep exposing that. Or cases like this. Ending the war on all fronts. That's what they've been telling you. Lifting all the sanctions. That's what they've been telling you. Releasing all frozen assets, compensating the war for damages and losses, recognition of Iran's sovereignty over the strait. The same things. Same 10-point plan from all that time ago. And I just go over this. Al Jazeera correspondent. That's who that was Ali Hashem down there. Reports that Iran's leadership instructed its negotiating team not to enter talks on the nuclear file unless these were met first. So again, this is the major point. Iran has been saying this. We will not even get into the nuclear conversation until these 5 points are acknowledged. That hasn't changed. Now, they have additional things. The U.S. is talking back and forth through Pakistan or when they meet, and these things don't change. As far as I can tell, that's never shifted. So for them to act like it suddenly is unacceptable means that they did that so you felt Iran was not doing what they were supposed to. They simply said the same thing they said to Trump last time and the time before that, or the people through him. But it's also possible Witkoff and Kushner are lying to him. I think that's almost a given at this point. Now, this is on the 12th later in the day. Iran Deputy Foreign Minister, they said U.S. rejected proposal because it is not a letter of surrender. So it's pretty easy to understand that, right? The idea is clear that this is, at least in the minds of the Iranians, they want us to give up. Otherwise, this is going to continue. And that's in the mind of the Israeli-U.S. government that somehow thinks that this is somehow a time game where they can just last out Iran. Well, that's being shown to be the opposite. So at some point, that has to flip. At this point, they're simply saying that the only thing they're asking for is just for us to give up. And when you're failing in a war, the last thing they're going to do is give up. Now, Glenn also jokes about this and says, is Iran still on its knees begging for Trump for a deal, offering everything he wants in exchange for nothing because they have no military capabilities left? This is what Trump has been claiming for 2.5 months. So maybe he'll be generous and finally let them surrender. What do you think? You just have to laugh at how stupid this is. 2.5 months, every other day. They're begging for a deal. We're just about to do it. Don't make me get mean. I'm going to kill your civilization. It's sad. Trump says he won't be much more patient with Iran. You just got to laugh. Of course, what do you get when you're failing and everyone sees through you and they all know what's happening and the whole world's starting to recognize what Zionism actually is? Well, you send out the Zionist Organization of America to say that Iran was part of 9/11. Yeah, they're actually doing that. Now, I'm not going to go into this now. It's honestly not even worth the time because it is one of the most flimsy arguments from 9/11. Even the New York Times broke this down a long time ago as being completely baseless. The reality was they tried right in the beginning. And you know why? Because the same reason we're seeing now. Israel and the United States made it about Iran. Right after 9/11, they tried to make it about Iran. Of course, they failed in that really spectacularly because it ultimately got shown in a lot of ways. I argue more so towards the ideas that we know about, the Israeli involvement and the reality of what we know about Al-Qaeda today, and especially what that shows you. And it was not Saudi Arabia and a bunch of box cutters. The point is they really wanted you to think it was Iran. And they failed in that because it wasn't Iran. And now they're literally bringing it back around. Why? Because they're engaged with Iran and they're losing. So Iran was behind 9/11. And of course, you also get the channels that do the same. Fox News comes out with a couple of whatever you want to call what these people look like. Iran is in some sense worse, bigger than Al-Qaeda, says this very conservative looking woman. They haven't done us direct damage yet, but we're risking, Boston, New York, Chicago, you name it. She says these freaks are foaming at the mouth for another 9/11, like Laura Loomer, for example. Worse than 9/11. You're literally trying to pretend that I don't even know how you frame this, whether you're talking about the lying about killing of Iranians. Iran, in some sense, is worse and bigger than Al-Qaeda. You mean the Al-Qaeda that we can prove you guys have created and worked with, or Israel, rather, and the U.S. governments have created and worked with, gave medical treatment to, they apologized for attacking Israel? Or the idea that they have fought and attacked Iran, or ISIS, rather, and the idea, it just is such a flimsy argument. But it's like Huckabee standing there and telling you, Israel created cherry tomatoes and telephones and blah, blah, blah. None of that is true. Sad. Oh, I think I might be jumping ahead really quickly. I forget. This might be in a clip I removed. I'm not sure. But just jokingly, Trump was, I think it was in Hannity's discussion. Yeah, no, it was actually. And it was, I might have it in here, but if I'll point to it again if I come to it, where he's talking about the removal of the uranium dust, whatever we're pretending is happening there. And he talked about, it's the granite, and that's why it was so difficult. And he goes, granite is hard as stone. No, it's not. Look it up. It's totally not. But I just find it hilarious that he does that. He just says, I don't even know why he decides to lie about the most inane things. Or maybe he got lied to. I don't know. But it's just hilarious how that happens. But so in this case, these people probably believe what they're saying. Trump warns Iran is playing games. Really? My God. But yeah, worse than Al-Qaeda. Painful. Of course, the Financial Times is reporting that Saudi Arabia floats Middle Eastern non-aggression pact with Iran. So not only is he failing, that people are working around him. They write, things are happening behind the curtains. Interesting things. Amidst all the news, suddenly Saudi Arabia has reportedly proposed a non-aggression pact with Iran. Now, I'm not sure where it will go, so I'm going to leave it there. But if it actually starts to have some momentum and Saudi Arabia is not just using this as a tactic, it might be very interesting to see what happens here. And very least, it shows you, if this is genuine, that Trump has completely lost the boat, or lost the plot, rather. But of course, now today, Iranian aerial strikes have targeted U.S. forces in the UAE. Now, this is an interesting development because the UAE, as I've been telling you, and anybody probably could have seen, but has come out even more so, it is avidly on the side of the U.S. and Israel in this, and is one of the very obvious examples of what they see as a co-belligerent. Legally, that's what they are. So they're in a war right now. So the idea that bombing them would somehow be a crime is just insane to me, or Israel, or anything in the United States, which I hope to God doesn't happen. But they right now are in an ongoing war, and there's not a ceasefire, despite what they keep lying about. And so at the end of the day, military targets are on the table. And what do? They show restraint. So in this case, though, the UAE has been clearly trying. I still think what we saw before was sort of an initiation of these things, the floated empty tanker, the idea of what we're talking about, the response and their location, that now I do think more so is Iran. And that was the one I said before where I thought was likely to be them, but still questioned it because they denied it. So now you have direct attacks. Iranian military launched another wave of missiles and drone strikes overnight. This was the 14th to the 15th. And it says at least 10 hypersonic missiles were launched, along with the unspecified number of drones, according to Iran. And they said the IRGC said the targets included U.S. forces at the Al Darfa Air Base in the United Arab Emirates for playing, quote, an intelligence support role in the invasion of the Islamic Republic of Iran, along with being a regional command location, which is true on every count. It's a big deal. Now, I think it was Douglas McGregor that posted, I don't think I have that in here, but ultimately, it pointed this out and said it was confirmed and said it was a really big deal. So interesting, because one, they say U.S. forces. We already know that Trump has lied about people being killed. I even just saw another report about some weird training exercise or something. I think that's how they hide these things. Either way, you're not going to hear reports about this. But clearly it's happening. So what does that show you? Now, in regard to the blockade, we're not even going to get into that much, though. The point clearly is that this is fail. Oh, I take it back, actually. Oh, I take it back. We're going to give you some China points here, and there is an overlap. I forgot I included that. So lastly, on this side of it, Drop Site News reports on the 14th. Oh, this was the one. I knew it. I knew it. I always do that. Trump says removing enriched uranium from Iran is about public relations. And this is the point about the granite. You'll hear it now. But think about how crazy this is. And this is him floundering in front of Hannity. I don't know why. He's now telling you that the idea of even removing the uranium is only about appeasing the fake news. But he just stood there and told you he doesn't care about your financial problems because we can't let them have a nuclear bomb. So then how would this be only public relations? I mean, you're just trapping yourself everywhere. But as always, guys, when you lie about everything, right? I've said that for so long, you're eventually going to contradict your previous lies.
No anti-aircraft. Now,
or that's this one.
Probably have. I mean, we know everything they've done. They've
wrong one. This one.
Project. To get it, it's a big project.
Do you feel there's been people that have, and generals that I've spoken to, that think you have to get the dust, which is the enriched uranium, or?
Of course, that's assuming they're even being accurate about the idea that they obliterate. I mean, you know, I argue we can see is that the enrichment facility was destroyed, which is actually what works against them because it shows you that even if they wanted to, they wouldn't be able to enrich it right now further. But then the argument becomes that is that the only location this was being held? And I don't feel like that makes sense. I'm not an expert on that. But then on top of that, that if it was obliterated, like it just becomes this weird argument that why we would take them at face value for that happening. And on top of that, at the end of the day, we're not talking about anything other than the 60%, which is already on the record. And before that, with the previous JCPOA that had already held that below 4%, and Obama had successfully removed a huge portion of it. And it's not to praise Obama, guys. They're all the same thing in my mind. It just is a reality of the facts you could look up. And it's just weird that they keep trying to make these fake arguments when they know we can all see it, which is one of the reasons why I think part of this is about sort of the engineered collapse. Again, like I said yesterday, which if you didn't hear, I'm going to be having an interview with James Corbett, I think on the 20th coming up, about that very point, the engineered collapse of the West and whether this is what we're watching.
Have you been told there may be a way to entomb it that they could never get to it?
So we were thinking about doing it early on, and it would take a while.
Yeah, they tried to when they pretended to rescue the pilot. Remember that? And they I mean, Wyatt Reed was just there on the ground proving this to you, showing you the blown up planes they lied about. And they either didn't rescue him or he lied about being there in the first place. And they lost that agenda, and that's what they allegedly tried to go do.
Take a week and a half. That's a long time to be in enemy territory. No, you got to move these massive amounts of granite. You know, it's granite's the hardest stone.
Nope, it's not. But whatever. You can feel free to look it up.
It's amazing that it's you know what, those were really powerful bombs that we used. And don't forget, we hit it on top of that. We hit Tomahawks on top of that.
Yeah, lots of wasted things.
No, I don't think it's necessary, except from a public relations standpoint. I think it's important for.
Did you hear that?
On top of that, we hit Tomahawks on top of that. No, I don't think it's necessary, except from a public relations standpoint. I think it's important for the fake news that we get it. I'm the one that said we're going to get it, and we're going to get it. We have our eye on it. So Space Force was my creation. I did that in my first term. It's going to end up going down as one of the most important of all of our military.
So it can be entombed.
Yeah, it can be.
Did you not notice that? I mean, not even Handy let him get away with that. By the way, not even by the way, like literally not even a pause. Just Space Force is cool, right? Space Force is awesome. My God, guys. I mean, I don't even understand how any person out there, maybe no one does, can actually look at the way this guy operates and go, yep, that's a leader. Yeah, he's the one always telling the truth, or he's always aware. He somehow can flip a map over or a placemat and draw the entire Middle East without a mistake. I don't buy it. It's just not true. I just think it's insane what people will buy, man.
What? Those were really powerful bombs that we used. And don't forget, we hit it on top of that. We hit Tomahawks on top of that. No, I don't think it's necessary, except.
And it's not necessary to get it, is what he's saying. The thing that he's been promising, the thing he told you is why he's doing this. Can't have a nuclear weapon. Okay. It's only public relations, he says right here.
From a public relations standpoint. On top of that, we hit Tomahawks on top of that. No, I don't think it's necessary, except from a public relations standpoint. I think it's important for the fake news that we get it. I'm the one that said we're going to get it, and we're going to get it. We have our eye on it. So Space Force was. By the way,
Space Force is excellent. What? That's crazy, man. But so realize, I mean, really think about this. I think he like not just stepped in, and he does it all the time. That was a major misstep. And I think he registered that. I think he recognized that in the moment. So all he basically admitted there was that we don't need to get that because it's not even really what we're doing. It's just to appease the fake news. But wait, but we're going to, and I'm going to, and we're going to get it. Space Force is really cool. That's just crazy. So he's telling you that the entire focus of what they claim they're fighting for, the reason they claim they initiated this illegal war, isn't even true. I mean, maybe that's the lie for all we know. This is, who knows how broken this whole thing is, but just acknowledge in this moment that this person will lie about whatever is going on all the time, as long as he gets what he wants out of it. That seems to be what everyone's doing in this. It's just no matter, as long as you get what you want in the end, somehow it all works out, right? That's like the Prospero point, right? As long as I get what I want, then it's all okay, right? No, that's not how that works.
Creation. I did that in my first term. It's going to end up going down as one of the most important of all of our military.
So it can be in tune.
Yeah. Back to the conversation.
It can be.
With eyes on it.
It can be, but I'd rather get it, to be honest with you.
But you just said it was public relations. You just said it wasn't even necessary. You just said it was, and so you're going to go get it and you're going to risk American lives for something that's a publicity stunt? You cannot talk your way out of what he just did right there.
Can be a lot of things can happen, and even despite the statement that, they can't get it, they are, first of all, if we left right now, it would take Iran 25 years to rebuild.
Okay, but there's an imminent threat that we have to reinitiate, and that's why it's justified for war powers. But 25 years. This guy is lost. I mean, I think this is a living example of what I'm always talking about. He's lied about so many things in such a short period of time. You are just spinning.
It can never be like it was. It would take 25 years. I would rather get it, but we have our eyes on it. We know exactly what's happening there. We had the other day there was.
Here's what I am going to say. That just jumped into my head. The only way that makes sense to me is if he's somehow working this out to be, well, we've lost in this regard. And no one wants this, no one's buying it. But so now we need the Strait to be reopened. We're going to pretend like that's the only thing we want. So we're going to downplay the idea of the bomb stuff. No, that's just fake news stuff. The Strait has to be open, even though it was before you started this. But even though we make the argument, even though everyone with a brain will know that, you'll still get the Nix orders and all the rest, and the Eric Cowdertys and the Matt Walshes, all the rest go out there. Oh, we won. We get it. We stopped Iran from controlling the Strait. Even though they still control the Strait. And, it's just not going to be the reality. And so I think that's what we're demonstrating. That would be my guess, is that he is trying to create very clumsily a shift into the new justification. That's why it went from Epic Fury to Operation Freedom, or I guess kind of didn't. And now they might go back to it. God, just never been a more embarrassing moment for the American government.
There was a man that tried to get into the chute. We saw there was a door that was blown to smithereens. But
make sure
Iran 25 years to rebuild, and it can never be like it was. It would take 25 years. I would rather get it, but we have our eyes on it. We know exactly what's happening there. We had the other day there was a man that tried to get into the chute. We saw there was a door that was blown to smithereens, and we know everything that's happening.
What does that have to do with anything? He's just so desperate to sidestep this conversation. He references some random thing, a guy with a door, but we know everything. So because you know about a guy with this thing, you somehow know everything going on in Iran? That doesn't even make sense. And on top of the idea that you're the one that built this around the fact that we can't let them have this, but now it's okay, they can have it because I can keep my eyes on it. Again, same point. That's embarrassing.
They ever moved on it. And I told them that if they send a force over there to try where I see somebody's trying, all we'll do is just hit it with a couple of bombs, and that's going to be the end of that. They won't know what's happening now. It would take Iran 25 years to rebuild, and it can never be like it was. It would take 25 years. I would rather get it, but we have our eyes on it. We know exactly what's happening there. We had the other day there was a man that tried to get into the chute. We saw there was a door that was blown to smithereens, and we know everything that's happening. If they ever moved on it, and I told them that if they send a force over there to try where I see somebody's trying, all we'll do is just hit it with a couple of bombs, and that's going to be the end of that. They won't do it. I said, we have 9 cameras on that site, on those 3 sites,
Right. So the idea that they are so right now, the point is, even though it's been pretty clearly shown that Iran is not this just sitting duck they pretend it is, and they do have capabilities, as we just showed you. The idea that they could just, we'll just lob some bombs in. No, it's not that simple. There are defenses and there are, I mean, it's maybe, but on top of that, I don't even think that's the real argument. I think this is the construct they've created. It's just, I mean, this is him trying to dig his way out of a hole. That's what I argue.
24 hours a day. We know exactly what's happening. Nobody's even gotten close to it. They looked at it at the beginning and they said, there's no way that anybody can ever get down to the nuclear dust.
Oh, so you end by saying it's not even possible, but I'm going to get it. But it's even public relations and not even real. Those are the three. That's all in one speech, I guess. Not sentence, a couple paragraphs, but in one delivery, he goes from that to that. How embarrassing.
You think it's...
But I'd still rather have it.
But I'd still rather have the thing I just told you is impossible. But, whatever. You pick which one you like, and we'll move forward. Space Force is cool, though.
They get it.
Wow. So, just... there is a special kind of stupid that we're watching right there, guys. I'm just going to be, it's not about, Trump derangement syndrome is the thing that partisans are suffering from, right? That's what we're talking about. Left and right, it's the same problem, whether it's delusion, whatever you want to call it. The idea that, but acknowledging that these people are embarrassing or that Biden is senile somehow makes you partisan or one side or the other. No, both things can exist. He is senile, and he is a clown, and he is stupid, and he is wrong, and he is losing, and he is also, what was the first thing I said? I already forgot. They're both, in my opinion, the same kind of corruption, the same kind of dishonesty. They just play it a little differently. Mencho Sint points out, China has always said that Hormuz should remain open. Now, what we got from Trump in regard to the China part of this was a bunch of lies. A bunch of things that we are already showing to be false. And I stand by what I think was the reality here. I think Trump went to China and kind of like a desperate effort to find his way out of this. And I don't think it worked. China, and this is Mencho pointing to what China said back in April. Because right now, Trump is saying, well, China wants to reopen the strait, or rather wants to basically join us to stop Iran from what they're doing. It's not true. And he writes, China has always said that the Hormuz should remain open. So Trump is basically saying they're demanding that it be reopened. Well, you see, here's the difference. It is already open. It's restricted. It's not closed, though. It's restricted to people engaged in a legal war against Iran. So when China says it should remain open, they're meaning that. Not that it should be closed by Trump with his blockade. And it says nothing new. They know the root of the issue is Israel and the United States. And here's the tweet that he's pointing to. This is from China, and this is the spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on April 3rd, 2026. The root cause of the disruption in the Strait of Hormuz is the U.S.-Israel illegal military operations against Iran. Yeah, keep telling us, Trump, how they're on your side against Iran. Only by ending the military actions and restoring peace and stability in the Gulf can the international shipping lane be open and safe. The international community needs to work together for de-escalation to prevent regional turmoil from further hitting the global economy and energy security. So you could take that for what you will. This meeting went really bad for Trump. I agree with him. I think he utterly failed at this. So Mencho sent on the 12th. So here's Trump telling you that China wants to work with us and they don't want Iran to do this. And they want all the things you've heard him say. On the 12th, like basically when they were on the way, China was poking them in the eye. At least 6 Chinese-owned tankers crossed the Strait of Hormuz on the 12th. And that's supposed to be, so here's the thing, is Trump was going there saying, well, he wants us to, wants to work with us to get this back open. And he's the one arguing that China has to be basically give some sort of concession, I guess, or some kind of an agreement in order for that to happen. And while that's the claim, well, it's not working. So I don't know whether that's incompetence or that they kind of made the choice to stand down because they didn't want that to be a problem. Because China told everybody, we're not listening to this. Sanctions from the U.S. don't matter at this point in regard to this dynamic. So you can decide whether they just back down, which kind of seems like the most likely. They don't want this to devolve into some war with China, or they just weren't able to do it. But this person says, China's humiliating Trump even before Trump reaches Beijing. The U.S. blockade is useless, like the Chinese say. So if you listen to Trump and the corporate media, well, you're always going to be wrong. Now, it doesn't mean you should blindly listen to everybody else, but you should consider those other opinions. Counterbalance it with what you're being told here. You can come to your conclusion. It's usually somewhere in the middle. Trump's visit tries to turn nothing into a political asset. There was much talk that President Trump hoped to resolve the war in Iran. That's my point. Before traveling to China. In reality, he's now going to China with the main mission of resolving the war in Iran. I completely agree with that. This article is Trump's visit tries to turn nothing into a political asset. Daniel McAdams says Trump is getting nothing from China, and that's why he's lying about it. So here's what he had to say about this. Your victor, and Scott Horton basically calls this out and says that he's, almost Orwellian, in an Orwellian style, lying to you. Here's what he said. Here's what Trump said. What? Oh, never mind. I forgot. This one I chose not to download. Just to wrap up here. Trump says one thing Xi Jinping agreed that he's ordering 200 jets. Boeing wanted 150, and he got 200. Fact check. Boeing shares actually dropped 4% when Trump announced that China would be buying 200 jets. You know why? Because it was actually 500 that they were expecting. So instead, Trump comes back knowing that and just lies. What he does. As Scott Horton says, your victory chocolate ration has been increased from 1 gram to half a gram this week. Thanks, big brother. Perfect. But that's what you get, guys. And you get the same clapping seals out there in Corbyn's on Twitter that all go, yay, Trump's the best. This is what winning looks like. This is what being respected on the international stage looks like. And the same people that told you 20 seconds ago that China was the biggest enemy and they're infiltrating everything. Maybe. I wouldn't disregard that possibility, but of course they don't even care about it, seeing as how it only mattered when they thought they could use it. Well, as Benjelson also points out, what Xi Jinping actually said about this was that the United States is basically a declining nation. Now, the government of the United States, I argue, is in decline. And I think that's objective at this point. It's pretty damn clear. Trump comes out and says, Xi Jinping very elegantly referred to the United States as perhaps being a declining nation. What he said was, when he elegantly referred to that being a declining nation, what he was referring to was tremendous damage we suffered during sleepy Joe Biden. And he's correct. Guys, it's just, this is like about as cringy as it gets. You're going to put words in his mouth. You're going to pretend like so if it's a declining nation, that means it's currently a declining nation. He wouldn't say it's declining nation when Biden was in control, then he would say that. So Trump is just trying to lazily make it about everybody but himself. That's not what he meant. The whole world is making this argument right now. And he's just trying to misdirect it for the people that will listen to whatever he says. The point is, the people that would go, oh, he meant that. Those people would go along with whatever you said. They would literally, whatever analogy, jump off the cliff, whatever, the lemming analogy, even though that's not even true. The point is that the people that listen to this would follow anything anyway. So you're not winning people with these lies. I argue you're only getting people that would already be on your side no matter what you did. Arnaud Bertrand, this is a funny one, actually. Here's MAGA Voice, one of these accounts that was shown to be, they have like 7 versions of the same kind of thing, whether it's bots or one person, it's manipulative. President Xi stuns the room saying to Trump, we should be partners, not rivals. He says, I never in a million years would have thought Xi would say something like that, except he said that to Blinken when Biden was president. See, now you could argue one of two things. These new media children are either this bad at their job and don't even care about the facts and just want to make every narrative about why Trump's the greatest, or they know that Blinken and that was said with Biden and just lied about it. Either one should alarm you that people listen to these counts and they got, what is this one? 1.4 million followers. I mean, that's more than some of the most influential people on this platform, guys. And of course, Arnaud Bertrand writes, Xi literally said the exact same words, literally exact same words in 2024 to Blinken in the exact same place, the Great Hall of People. It's painful that people are out there doing this and they benefit wildly from it. This one is simply about the Chinese foreign students. Trump says it's good to have 500,000 foreign Chinese students in the U.S. and for China to purchase U.S. farmland. Do you hear that, Americans? So for China, it's okay that China purchases farmland. Do you know how much of a problem that was for the Republicans more than anybody? And rightly so. Why would we allow a foreign government of any kind to buy American? We're talking about the government, right? China, not average, but the Chinese government. Because that's huge. Israel, anybody, UK, it shouldn't be happening, in my opinion. And he says, no big deal. Colleges and farm prices would collapse, I think. Frankly, I think that's a good thing that people came from other countries and they went, oh, is it a good thing? Well, that's not what anybody you support thinks. Not what you told them. You and your team were telling us 30 seconds ago that China was taking over the country. Alex Jones would scream about that. But suddenly now I have a feeling he's going to support you. What do you think? Leonardo Joni says he's lying. He has to allow Chinese students in and give our farmland to China because Miriam Adelson wants to operate casinos in China, and this is what China asked for in exchange. Yeah, that's her opinion. Certainly could be. Now, we do know that Miriam Adelson is one of the largest funding mechanisms through Trump's administration, and she is a Zionist that lives in Israel, and ultimately, Chinese and farmland thing was something that was very, very like a problem for his supporters, and now it doesn't matter. You can decide for yourself. Now, this last point, a few others, and we're going to finish. This was the part we're going to get into more in depth tomorrow or the next show. That's about the further idea of the censorship. But to show you again, here's Eric Dougherty. Update. Apparently, the U.S. government seized everything given to the American press by the Chinese before they boarded the Air Force One. Reporters couldn't take credentials, burner phones, or pins. They had to be thrown in the trash, per the New York Post. Okay, well, there's a few points you made here, right? First one, do they do that when they come back from Israel? No, they do not. Even though Israel is the world's leader in spyware. And, oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Oh, shoot. Let me make sure I didn't miss the last one. Somebody just texted me telling me I wasn't showing the screen. Where did I leave off? Let me know in the chat. Did we miss? It doesn't matter. I guess not all these are important to see. Yeah, well, if you didn't miss, all the links are included as always if you want to make sure you include those. Point here. New York Post reports that the U.S. government, so they have reporters that are on Air Force One. You see it all the time, right? They go along with them. They, according to the New York Post, they seized their credentials, their burner phones, their pins, their information. Throw it away. So first of all, yeah, press freedom and free speech and journalism. Yeah, they don't care, guys. Because I argue it's because they're embarrassed by what happened. They don't want them reporting or at least having evidence of how embarrassing this trip was. That's my opinion. But then on top of that, they don't do this when they come back from Israel, the world's leading government in spyware. The ones that sabotaged pagers and the clips will tell you that we have this in every single country. The former head of Mossad says publicly, booby-trapped devices in every country you can imagine. So think about this for a second and ask yourself why it happens here. If it's going to be a policy, it should be a policy everywhere, not just in China when you want to make a certain point or when you want to see. I mean, how in the world is even something? I mean, understand. They're on Air Force One, so you could make the argument it's about some kind of security, and that's why he's trying to frame it this way. But then they would do it everywhere. So it can't be what it's really about. You could decide. My opinion, though, is these are, mainstream, but, in the category of journalists and ultimately have the right to have the information that they were recording. I just think it's another contradictory thing of what they always claim they believe in. And of course, Trump says, I think it's sort of treasonous what you write. To the people in Air Force One, talking about the liars about the Iran war. No, and this is why you're seizing their documentation. They all see right through you because they hate you probably because they are partisan. But either way, whether they hate you for the wrong reasons or not, the point is that it's easy to see through a dishonest person that's constantly lying. And don't forget, this is what Sebastian Gorka just said based on his new counterterrorism proposal. And don't forget, he's a foreign person. The point is, this is about censorship. This is exactly what this very person told you he cared about when Democrats were doing it. Now he's showing himself to be an utter clown and hypocrite.
However, there are things within our laws that you are not allowed to say, right? The freedom of speech does not extend to inciting violence.
It does.
Or threatening the lives.
It does.
Of specific individuals. That is not permissible.
Yeah, of course, because the U.S. government has laws that say that are not, that you're not allowed to do this constitutional thing. Well, that law is unjust and it's unconstitutional, which therefore means it's repugnant to the Constitution and per Mayberry versus Madison, 1803. Anything repugnant to the Constitution is null and void. So overall, the point is you can't say that it's illegal to say these things to a person, no matter what they are, because I thought it was free speech that shall not be infringed. I thought that was an inalienable right. So if you say I can't yell fire in a theater, that means that's not an inalienable right. Now, I make this point every time. You can have a conversation about it. You can argue that's what has to happen because it's dangerous. Well, then make the argument and argue for limited speech because that's what you truly believe in. At the end of the day, what he's saying, whether about the president or anything else, we can't, and look, you could argue that saying that about the president shouldn't be allowed. Now, I disagree for anybody. I think you have the right to say whatever you want. Action is where the crime is committed because that is the actual truth. But if you want to make the argument, then argue that you believe in limited speech, at least in that context, because then you'd be honestly arguing what you actually believe. But to say free speech, no matter what, except this because that's dangerous, well, then you're being a hypocrite. Or Elon Musk, freedom of speech, but not freedom of reach. You're a hypocrite. One of the most spectacular of all time. In fact, this guy is embarrassingly so, because you are just like the Democrats you so loathe. And that's pathetic.
Beyond that, we will map. We haven't talked much about it, but if you read the counterterrorism strategy,
yeah, which remember, he's in the government now. And he's responsible for that, which frames anarchists as terrorists.
It's a very clear document. We don't shy away from telling the world what we're going to do.
Right.
We are going to map out these individuals.
American citizens that have opinions that they don't agree with.
We are going to identify them.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to find this is God bless Scott Besson, Cash Patel.
Cash Patel, because he's so competent. And Besant, who is, Mr. Soros insider, or all the things that you guys all said you cared about when it was Democrats doing it. Funny how that's not hypocritical at all, is it?
AG, the acting AG, Todd Blanche, the money trail.
One who made the deal with Maxwell, or he just shamelessly shouts people down for saying things that we all know are true.
The money trail is the most important thing. You look at these from the river to the sea, bring the intifada to the streets of.
Right. So if you say from the river to the sea, and you happen to have funding from anything, or have signs that look alike, apparently you're going to be arrested as a terrorist. Or at least that's what he's kind of clumsily arguing right there. So, these people and their funding. But what are you even talking about? Is it illegal to have funding? And secondarily, the idea that anybody, this is the whole larger point about this. We know that both sides, this man right there and his team, will fund people they believe in. And I shouldn't make it, the government at large and the mechanisms they create to do so will fund people they want to support and act like it's totally okay because they're good guys fighting for freedom. Well, guess what? Plenty of people on the Democrat side protesting on the ground believe that about what they're doing. The idea that you can then suddenly argue that by people doing this, it's a designed way to stop anybody from having a legitimate stance against the government. Whether Soros or Koch or Elon Musk or anybody else, the idea if they're funding people should be looked at and highlighted and exposed. But if there's not a crime being committed, the government stepping in to do something about it is only going to create the world in which you're not allowed to protest at all. You're not allowed to speak out at all. God forbid you have signs that look similar because we know you're Antifa now, or whatever dumb, unverified argument they make. Now, just understand, we're going to hunt you down because you say things. There's no world in which that is not the same thing that Democrats were doing that you guys were screaming about.
America. It's so interesting. You're on the campus of Berkeley, or you're on the streets of New York.
Interesting. I'm sure he's going to be a really not subjective point coming with his face like that.
Everybody has exactly the same placard.
Yeah, weird. Everybody. It's not possible they could have been made them that way, or that they have funding from a group they work with, or that they're part of an organization that protests things on a regular. Totally not possible. Or it's an AstroTurf lie. That's also possible. But seeing how you're just kind of making it like the way you're doing this is because we all know it's so obvious. That's childish. That's subjective. But that's what government does. You are this. Again, the fact that this person ended up being exactly what he was always calling out is the perfect cycle of the way this always works.
Printed the same font. That's a little bit strange. So
yeah, and it's possible in 1,000 different ways. But go ahead and make your point. Or are you just going to leave that hanging as if anybody with signs similarly must be bad people? Are you not going to point to the 1,000 different Republican-led things that do exactly the same thing? Of course not. And just like that, there are average people with their hand-drawn signs, just like they're on the Democrat side. These people are children, and they know exactly what they're doing. Or worse, this guy doesn't even know he's being played, and somehow has been worked up into this frenzy to think that these people are actual terrorists. And it's either way you look at it, it's pretty pathetic.
I can't discuss, ongoing operations, but...
Oh, got it. So float a big subjective assumption and then just go, well, we can't get into it, but wink, wink, lots of evidence. Trust me. It's just sad, guys. Remember this guy that was coming out of the White House thing, or he was like being made fun of, and he was like, "Oh, you're the fake news" to the media, and it was like this whole back and forth. I feel like half this stuff today was completely organized. Like these people, like the most transparent administration with the Epstein thing. Are we going to pretend like that wasn't completely coordinated with Cernovich and libs of TikTok and all these people that are now acting like Epstein files don't exist? sad. That's all the same reason why platforms like ours do not get reach, because of this, because of what we're doing. But we'll leave it there for today. We'll come back to all of this. By the way, Ali Boudemont came out with a scathing piece breaking down how that Daily Mail article about October 7 lies and atrocity propaganda was completely, it was atrocity propaganda. It was, as he says, no victim count, no case list, no evidence of mass rapes. They've lied about everything, and he tears it apart. We'll go through it the next show. But guys, hope you can see what we're talking about. I've just never seen, it's such a, I mean, it's alarming, right? Because we're watching these people who, at least one point, as much as they've always been dishonest and corrupt, at least had like some like semblance of what did Charlie call it? You know, like they were like serious people. And not, again, I argue it's good that Trump and them are taking the mask off. It's much more easy to see what they've always been, but it's unnerving to watch it be so out of control and watch them be so like staggeringly incompetent, which is why I want you to at least ask the question if there's something else that seems to be influencing this. Even if you think it started with incompetence, why wouldn't somebody step in and go, I'm taking advantage of that, whether it be China or Russia or anybody? Just ask the question. Because I think it's pretty clear that something is happening, but you know, just the holdouts out there that believe that these people are still on your side, it's all right there in front of you. And if you take that next step and realize he's lying to you, please do not turn to the other side of the paradigm. Recognize that they're the same thing. Start looking for different paths. Thank you for tuning in. I love you all. As always, question everything. Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.